Today is the third part of the subject Prisca Theologia. The first part was dealing with astrology, the second part with astrotheology, and this will be dealing with occult science and esoteric wisdom. And what I will endeavour to do is to present this ancient theology, Prisca meaning ancient, in a syncretic way. Okay, so syncretism was something that the Renaissance people knew a lot about, because Pico, one of the foremost Renaissance masters, he pretty much brought syncretism to the attention of the world when he went down to Rome with his 900 theses. Here they are. That's another zero to the 90 theses of Martin Luther 30 years after Pico. Anyway, Pico went down to Rome and he decided that he would challenge the Vatican to a debate to prove that all the sciences, all the philosophies and theologies and schools of thought can all be syncretized into one homogeneous, harmonious unity of teaching. What I'm going to be sharing with you today is the knowledge and the understanding of what all the philosophies are based on. And it's a simple cycle of nature, or cycles of nature. Okay, so with one graph we should be able to pretty much explain how most of the sciences work and how much of the philosophies work. So it's very interesting how Pico treated the subject. He went down to Rome because he was trying to bring back the Prisca Theologia. You see, this word was very much on his lips, as it was on Marsilio Ficino's lips, the guy who translated the Hermetica. Now, the Hermetic wisdom has always been there. It's been there for thousands and thousands of years. And according to Stephen Meller, who was a person who went down to Egypt and spoke to the indigenous wisdom keepers, and that would be Abdel Hakim Awiyan, who has now passed away. But here Stephen explains how the indigenous wisdom keepers explained many things about the true history of Egypt, and how Egypt has an antiquity of at least 50 to 65,000 years, with that particular consciousness, wave of consciousness that created such wonderful buildings like the pyramids. Now, those pyramids are built in such a way that it is impossible to replicate them today with our science and technology. The pyramid codes is probably another one of the products that I would like to bring to your attention when it comes to the truth about Egypt. Okay? Carmen Butler has also interviewed Abdel Hakim Awiyan in this wonderful documentary, which shows the true antiquity of things like the Sphinx and the Great Pyramid and all the megalithic sites down in Saqqara and Dendra and Luxor, etc. So, and with that, I would like to bring your attention to the Commission School of Ancient Mysticism, and I'll be doing a 2-week tour in Egypt next year in October with Yusuf and Patricia Awiyan, the son and daughter-in-law of Abdel. So when you watch, you can watch that. You can see that on YouTube, but I'd recommend you get that for your own collection. And you'll see Abdel there discussing the true origins of this wonderful science. Okay, so what Rome would like us to believe is that civilization's about 6,000 years old, and there was an Adam and an Eve, and apart from that, they were very barbaric, and many of the human brothers lived in caves, and then, of course, evolved their intelligence, and now here we are at the peak of all wisdom and intelligence in linear history. Whereas the Prisca Theologia proves that this is false. Absolutely false. We live in cycles whereby consciousness grows and then recedes. Grows and then recedes. And we have been at the bottom of a wave of loss of consciousness for about 5,000 years. Again, according to Abdel, the indigenous wisdom keeper, and we've been in the age of Amun for 5,000 years. And it's the age of darkness and slumber, spiritual slumber. And before that was the age of Aten, you see, and which had more light. Okay, and then it goes back and back to the golden age. But we've been at the bottom of the wave for such a long time. So syncretism is all about bringing back the unity of the religio/science that we once enjoyed on this earth. So there is abundant proof that once upon a time we were all united in the one science. And the proof of that is in that we find that the gods of various cultures seem to have the same deeds to their credit, and the same numbers and the same names, etc. For instance, Zeus of the Greeks seems to be very similar in his actions and behaviour to Jupiter of the Romans, etc., etc. And Thoth of the Egyptians seems to be the same guy that the Greeks call Hermes and the Romans call Mercurius, and the Hindus call, or the Easterners call Buddha. So what in effect we're going to be doing is we're going to be pulling back the information that comes from all of these sources to show that they all have one common thread underpinning them. Now, the way in which we can do this is through one graph. And the graph you've seen many times if you've watched my presentations. Now, what I'm doing here is just following science and nature. You see, this is an old map of the Earth. And the old map is divided in two by an equator. And you have a northern hemisphere and a southern hemisphere. And usually on good maps you'll see the sine wave that goes through the equator and hits the Tropic of Cancer, and then goes back through the equator and then down to the Tropic of Capricorn. And this produces the seasons every year. Now, the interesting thing about this map is they placed the glyph of Aries right at the beginning here, and then you have Taurus over here, and then Cancer right on cue with the Tropic of Cancer. And then as you go along you have Leo, and then you have Virgo here, and the scales of Libra, right at the point of equilibrium, okay, the middle of the sine wave. So I'm going to follow this science, and what we're going to find is as we go through these 12 segments of the sphere, of the sky, is we're going to find all the characters in all of the mythologies, and including the holy, so-called Holy Bible. And we're going to discover a lot about science, a lot about fairy tales and nursery rhymes and mythologies, etc. And what we will discover is the fact that the ancients based all of their science on this simple science. because it explains how everything is produced in the universe. Okay? So let's just follow that. And we have, of course, the Tropic of Cancer above the equator, 23.5 degrees. And we have the Tropic of Capricorn below the equator, 23.5 degrees. Now, the sine wave, of course, you saw wrapped right around the Earth, okay? Because that sine wave is produced when the sun appears to go through the ecliptic, through the 12 signs of the zodiac, because of the tilt of the Earth and its angle as it goes around in its orbit, producing 4 seasons. So what happens is, there is the path that the sun appears to take. Okay, and it makes that sine wave. Now, Aries, of course, we said starts here at the beginning, and this was Cancer, so we can pretty much draw a line there for Cancer. And then Libra was over here, and that would be the Tropic of Capricorn. So over here we have March the 21st, June the 21st, the solstice, the equinox, September the 21st, the autumnal equinox, and December the 21st, the winter solstice, from the northern hemisphere, of course, okay? Now, so these are describing the equinoxes, the days of equilibrium, and the days of maximum light and minimum light. So what we do is we bring this circle around. That's a bit of an egg shape, isn't it? Now, and we bring this, the solstice and December the 21st around, so we make a circle. Now, what we get from this cycle is a circle like this, which the ancients called the circle of the zodiac. And this is how it looks. Aries is the first sign. Aries. Taurus is the second sign. And Gemini is the third sign. That's the spring. So from March the 21st to June the 21st, you have the spring. Okay? And then after Gemini, you have Cancer, because you see the sun has hit the Tropic of Cancer, and now the sun needs to wane and go down to winter. So that's longest day of the year, shortest day of the year. So we have this polarity, you see? Okay? Now, here we have Cancer, because the sun has touched the Tropic of Cancer, so it stays in Cancer for 30 days. Here we have Leo, and here we have Virgo, the beautiful summer months. Okay? Then the sun drops below the equator. So the sun goes bye-byes for 6 months. And in the north, the winter months come. Okay, so you have to be prepared for the winter months. Now, what happens there is the winter has the colour of red. Because the sun is passing through the Red Sea. You see, around about September, what happens is those beautiful green leaves begin to turn red. So they look around in the Northern Hemisphere and say, well, the sun's passing through the Red Sea. Because everything in autumn turns red. Orange, yellow, red. Okay? So this was considered to be the Red Sea. You see, you have to go through the Red Sea, and finally you get into the Promised Land. This is the Promised Land, the summer. And I'll explain why it's the Promised Land, but there's a lot of reasons why they called this the Promised Land. Okay? And here is the Red Sea, or Tartarus. And here we have Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces. Okay? And this, of course, has the lush green look of vegetation, photosynthesis, because the sun is booming. He's happy in his kingdom. In fact, the sun rules, in astrology, the sun rules over here. Okay? The moon, she rules over here in Cancer. And then always next to those will be Mercury, always. Mercury can never be more than 28 degrees away from the sun. And Mercury would correspond to the disciple of Jesus called John, because John says, I was always near unto the Lord. I'm the one that the Lord loved. Yes, the Lord, as you will see in the mythologies and in the Gospels, that's this guy, Mercury. In any birth chart, you will always see the sun in its sign, and Mercury will be either a sign next door on either side of the sun, or in the same sign as the sun. Okay? So check out your birth charts, and there's Mercury, always faithful and close to the sun. He can never be badly aspected to the sun. He will always be a friend and support of the sun in this science. Next to them will be Venus, because Venus cannot be more than 48 degrees away from the sun. You see, Mercury and Venus are actually inner planets. They are inside our orbit, smaller than our orbit and closer to the sun. Therefore, they can be blocked out by going in front of the sun. And what I'm referring to is our solar system is a vortex. Okay? This is exactly how our solar system works. We don't have a solar system where the sun is over here and then all the planets orbit on the same plane. That's ridiculous. And it has been debunked by scientists like Walter Russell in this book. Okay? So what happens is, of course, we've got Mercury over here, and then we've got Venus, and then the Earth. And when Mercury goes in front of the sun, around here and here, always in this path here of the vortex, we don't see them. But scientists tell us that it's because Mercury or Venus has gone behind the sun. It can never go behind the sun. It will always be, the sun is always at the top of the cone, and the planets are always behind. So when Mercury and Venus disappear, which Jupiter, Mars and Saturn cannot do, because they are outer planets, so they can never be hiding, you see, behind the sun. And so, whereas these ones will be. So this is why we need to understand their placement. Okay, I'm teaching you a little bit of modern science. By the way, Nassim Harriman has got a good video explaining this solar system, and on my YouTube site, Mr. Theology, you can see some science videos explaining how this solar system works. Okay, there's an Indian scientist called Palathadka Keshava Bhat, B-H-A-T. Okay, and you can see his video on YouTube where he explains how the vortex solar system works. I've included a bit of this in my presentations because I think we should consider this and try and wrap our minds around it, because this is going to debunk the old theory, just like this one debunked the flat earth theory, etc. Okay? So now we understand why these planets are always friendly to the sun, Venus and Mercury. Then next in line is Mars. Sorry, I've done something wrong here. Where's my green? Let me correct myself. I did put Mercury there. So Mercury and Venus is here. Sorry, I put Venus over here. That's the mistake that I made. Okay. So let's do that again. You've got the sun and the moon ruling. They are the most luminous orbs in the sky. Therefore, they rule summer. Okay. Now, when you look at it, look at this as the four seasons: spring, summer, autumn, and winter. So when you look at it, this July, August is the hottest time of the year. So Hello. Right on cue, you find the Son dwelling in his house, in his kingdom of heaven. This is heaven and this is hell. The Son always lives in the kingdom of heaven, in the Lion of the tribe of Judah, where the scepter shall not depart. Can't be removed. Cannot be removed. And I'll show you that science. The moon, she's always there. She's always there in the kingdom with her husband. That's Abraham and Sarah. That's King Arthur and Guinevere. It's Jack and Jill climbed up the hill. That's the hill. This is always considered to be the hill, as you will see. Okay? So you've got Mercury always close. And then Venus close again, but then you have Mars. Okay? And Mars is a little bit of an opposer. He rules Aries and Scorpio. Okay? Now, why does he oppose? Well, because he's doing a 90-degree angle with the moon here, and he's doing a 90-degree angle here with the sun. And anyone who's studied astrology knows that that's a square, and that's a bad aspect. And so the sun is putting himself in a position of antagonism toward... Mars is putting himself in a position of antagonism toward the sun, whereas these ones dare not. Mercury and Venus. Okay? So Mars, you see, is the beginning of this antagonism toward the kingdom of heaven. And then you've got Jupiter. You see, so these boys, the big boys, and here we have Saturn and Saturn. So you've got... Saturn is the great opposer in this system, because he is always opposing directly the moon or the sun. He always opposes the greater luminaries. That's why he's the greater malefic in astrology, because of his position of antagonism on the outer of the solar system, and he's cold. And the sun doesn't like cold, so he cast him down into hell. Okay? And this is the placement of the seven. Okay? Who are the seven? Well, the seven are always known as the archons, or the cosmocrators, the ones who gouge out matter. You know, they've got knives in their hands, the little dwarf gods of Egypt. Or the potters of Memphis, the potters of Tar in Egypt. Or the Jews call them the Elohim. Very interesting word, Elohim. And I pointed out last week in the presentation, in the Hawaiians say aloha. Aloha. I mean, you know, it's things like this, which I'm going to give many examples of, that show that there's this commonality, there's this common, fundamental, spiritual science/religion that underpins all systems. And it's there once you go looking for the clues. If you don't go looking, you will not find. But you have to overturn all the stones. That's why this science is called occult science. Why is it occult? Well, it's been occulted to the eyes of, say, churchgoers, for instance, because what do they get told? Well, they get told, don't you read any of the publications or books or anything that any other philosopher or church publishes, because that's from the devil. You know, just read our publications. Well, is that overturning every stone? It's not. But the Elohim are seven, and they correspond to all of the sevens that we see in nature, because nature is a septenary. Okay? Whereas mind, Pymander, the mind of the divine, is 12. 12. Okay? The ether, the God, the cause. Okay? And how it imprints its patterns on matter is through the principle of seven, you see. When you place the zodiac, this was the gift that the ancients gave us. They gave us this gift. And this is the gift that will syncretize all of the philosophies in the near future. because it's the revival of Hermetic wisdom that will syncretize all of the philosophies. And one day, in the very near future, we will have this one religion because we will understand it. Well, I doubt whether we'll call it a religion, because religion means relegare, and that means to bind, to tie together in a bundle, like the fasci of Rome, which is a fascist dictatorship. But it will be the knowledge of the true God, as the Bible says. That the day will come when everyone will be filled with the knowledge of the true God. This is it. It's nature. It's science. It's not hocus pocus traditions that are handed down which have no basis in anything real. It has to be real. And that's what Hermetic wisdom is all about. It's real truth, verifiable and provable. So when you place Aries over here at the equator, at the equinox, and Libra, the opposite, at the equator, the equinox, what you have is if you place the human being inside, you'll see the head always in Aries and the neck, and you'll notice that there are seven chakra points. You see, they go straight through, and they live basically on the spinal column, and they are energy centers. They are wheels. You see, and St. John in the book of Revelation calls those the 7 seals that need to be opened. And the Lord opened the first seal, and I heard a voice of an angel. And then he opened the second seal, and I heard a voice of an angel. You need to study what the angel says, and you'll see that these are the bursting of the 7 seals. And the Elohim, the 7 planets in the solar system, the 7 days of the week. These are the Cosmocrators, or the Elohim of the Jews. So what we do then is, as we go through this wheel, we begin to see that it tells a story. You see, the sun tells a fabulous story as it goes through the seasons. Here it tells a story of conquest and how he has defeated his enemies down below in Tartarus. And who would they be? Well, just have a look. Winter. Capricorn and Aquarius, associated with Saturn. Saturn, he gets the pleasure of killing his brother's light, who he opposes. The great opposer, Saturn. He gets the pleasure of killing his brother's light on the last day of that cycle, the 21st of December, because he takes over on the 22nd. And Saturn kicks him out. He says, no fire in my quadrant. I rule this quadrant. See, here there's fire, cardinal fire, fixed fire, and mutable fire. Mutable because it must be extinguished. The cycle of heat and life generation must be extinguished by Mr. Cold. So he's always there, and he's ready to kill the light of the sun. So you see the job of Saturn. Poor guy. He gets disparaging remarks because he has to play his role in nature. So he gets to be a very naughty boy. Okay, and let's think about Saturn for a minute, shall we? Think of all the things that are associated with Saturn. The 7th day of the week is associated with Saturn. It's called Saturn Day, right? Saturday. And what usually happens on that day? Would that be the weekend, the day of revelry? You know, Saturday night fever. And let's go out Saturday night, boys. Let's go out on the tiles, right? It's always this guy. It's always Saturn, the bad boy. Let's have a look at the year. So that's the week. Okay. By the way, the moon does not dominate the week. Okay? Saturn dominates the week. I'll explain that later. It belongs to him. The number 7 is Saturn. It's the Sabbath day, the 7th day. It's the 7th planet. It's the one that is the one that is right on top, the top chakra. Saturn's here, the moon's down below, the bottom chakra. The alpha and the omega. So he dominates the 7th day of the weekend. He is the boss of the week, and I'll explain that later. All right, what about the day? What happens during the day? Let's see where Saturn appears during the day. If we have established that on March the 21st, the sun splits the day between 12 hours of darkness and 12 hours of light, well then the sun must rise at 6 o'clock in the morning, 6 a.m, and set at 6 p.m. It's the only days of the year where this happens. On the equator, the sun rises at 6 a.m. and sets at 6 p.m. Only happens on these 2 days, these 2 golden days. Right? So if you place 6 o'clock there, 12 midday here, 6 p.m. over here, and 12 a.m. over here, midnight, then you begin to see how Saturn is important in this cycle. Because Saturn rules from, Aries rules from 6 to 8, Taurus 8 to 10, Gemini rules 10 to 12, Cancer rules 12 to 2, 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 10 o'clock. Wow. Right on cue, we have Saturn turning up at midnight. And what happens after midnight? It's the naughtiest time of the day, is it not? You know, some people who are quite forward in telling you that they do their best work after midnight and etc. Okay? Yeah, he gets from 12 to 4. But the benefits of Saturn's rule is that you can do good thinking at this time of the night. Many philosophers and many geniuses have found most of their insights at this time of the night. You know, King David in the Psalm says, "Oh, I wake up in the middle of the night to look at your stars and tell forth your glory and be inspired by your heavens." This is a magic time, but it's also that time of revelry where things happen, you know. Thieves do their work at night, don't they? You see, and Saturn rules the night. Now, let's have a go at the year. How does Saturn affect the year? Well, this is winter. So he snuffs out the sun's light in mutable fire, Sagittarius. Here's another one. In ancient Rome, they used to celebrate the Saturnalia. Okay? And what happened in the Saturnalia? Well, first of all, when was it celebrated? Well, it was started on the 17th of December, 4 days before the solstice. And it went all the way to Christmas Day, the 25th of December, when the sun begins its journey, all the way back up the holy mountain. So all in here, the Romans celebrated one of the most famous Bacchic orgies of history. Revelries. Absolute revelry time, man. Christmas is a reminder of the Saturnalia. In fact, it is the festival of the Saturnalia. That's what Christmas is. That's why you go out to your friends on Christmas Day and you get drunk and, you know, you abuse each other emotionally and everything like that. In Rome, yeah, you know, how many traumatic Christmases have you been through? Can you remember them? Any good ones? Oh, yeah. Well, they're good because there's good stuff that happens here too. It's not all bad. But it's about Saturn. That's the point. Look for Saturn. You've got to look at what he's doing. He's the one with the horns, man. And he's ready to reap your soul because he's the Grim Reaper. Souls ascend from the gateway of the gods here. This is the descent in the Tropic of Cancer ruled by the moon. This is the gateway of men. We come in through here, through that tropic. It's a stargate. And we leave at this tropic. Capricorn's where we say bye-byes to fleshly incarnation. In fact, the rings of Saturn, that's the last sphere that we have to deal with in terms of physical incarnation, okay? And this is how it works. So these are the 10 heavens. That's the primum mobile. Primum mobile. The crystalline sea. The firmament, where the zodiac is. This is what we're doing here, the firmament, the zodiac. And below are the 7 Elohim, the cosmocrators, the creators. Saturn is always on the top. This is the kingdom of Saturn. That's his kingdom. Because Saturn is Chronos. Chronos is time. Chronology, etc. All those time words. So we're stuck in time. We're stuck in a sine wave. And I dealt with this last week. Sine wave is a sin wave. That's where the sin is, time. Because you're born in time, you must die in time. Ain't none of these bodies going to be around forever. These are just a dream. So, but the soul needs to learn this science, because this is the true soul science of the stars above, as above, so below, that enables us to journey back, to make our journey back. And Christianity and the churches and Rome and the Vatican are all about trying to suppress this hermetic wisdom. Because if they can do that, they get to have more slaves on the planet for future harvesting their energies. You see? So it's very important that this wisdom be understood. It must be mastered. This is the structure of the universe, the material structure. This is how it works. And you live in this octave. That's the octave in which you dwell, dominated by these 7. They are responsible for every little atom and cell in your body being in the place that it is. All the cells, it's like a coagulation of molecules that have happily agreed to just work together as one organism for you to be able to exist physically on the physical plane, on this earth. There's the earth at the bottom, the 8th sphere. And this is the descent of souls: Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, the Sun, Venus, Mercury, Moon. And they are the 7 chakras: pineal gland, pituitary gland, throat chakra, heart chakra, solar plexus, and the generative chakra, and the root chakra. And as we activate those powers and get those little wheels a-spinning, we actually go up back to heaven, and heaven is here in the body. As I will show you later, part of this science is all about the body. In the scriptures they talk about the Holy Land. It's no use going to Judah, it's no use going to Egypt. The Holy Land is your body. The body is the Holy Land. Here is the Holy Land, guys. That's the ecliptic, the 12 signs of the zodiac in the body. Pisces in the feet, Aries in the head. The Pleiades right on cue. That should be sort of more up in the head area, but the Pleiades are in Taurus, which is in the head, in the centre of the head. Correspond to all the good little glands that are going on in there, like your pituitary, the limbic system, and stuff like that. All in here. And the spine, this is the Holy River, right? And Sodom and Gomorrah is down here in the bottom chakras, the red chakras. That's Sodom and Gomorrah. And this is the river. Eridanus is the great river. There it is, the Eridanus. This is one of the deacons of Taurus. Eridanus is the Jordanus, the Jordan River. It's in the head. That's heaven. This is earth. This is hell. Heaven, earth, hell. So above, Midgard, inferior, infernal. Infernal always carries with it the colours red. In fact, in the occult science, they taught that everything below the kidneys was considered to be Egypt. This is Egypt. And this is why God's children, the elect, go through the Red Sea and must come out on the other side of the Red Sea in order to be saved. And this is exactly why they celebrate the Passover. Right here on cue, and they eat the lamb, the sacrificial Passover lamb. And I think it was Jesus that was called the Passover lamb, was it not? Yes, the Passover lamb. Why would you call Jesus, the Saviour, a Passover lamb? Because you're talking about astrology. The Bible's full of astrology. That's why he is the lamb. And the blood of the lamb. The blood of the lamb is the sun's rays, the beautiful photons that drench us in the spring. You see, when the sun kills the lamb in the 30 days of Aries, it kills the lamb and sheds its blood as a sacrifice every year. And that blood is the impregnation of the blossom season. And then the fruits come from that blood, from the death of the lamb. Aries, the lamb, the sacrificial lamb, must be sacrificed every year for us to be saved. That's why in the first words of the Gospel of John, you see, people don't notice this, but John begins with a fully grown Jesus. He doesn't begin with a baby in the crib or in a manger down here in Capricorn, where the son's a little baby. John and Mark, the two Gospels, begin over here in Aries. And there's telltale signs. Last week I dealt with this and pretty much covered it and proved it conclusively. I went through all the chapters of Mark, the 16 chapters, and all on cue, they were talking about Aryan, all the Aryan constellations, Cassiopeia, Cephas, Andromeda, and all of the decanal constellations that are associated with these two signs here, Pisces and Aries. And then it talks about, the early chapters of Mark talk about light, which is the Pleiades and Venus, the two lights of Taurus. And then it talks about your brothers and twin, etc., etc. And then it goes, here's the transfiguration of Jesus, right on cue, I think in the 8th chapter of Mark, where the sun is transfigured. You see? Now, John, this is the first chapter of John. Okay? Verse 30. The next day, seeing Jesus coming towards him, John said, "Look, there is the Lamb of God that takes away the sin of the world." First chapter of John. And then, of course, in the next couple of chapters of John, you can rest assured that he'll be talking about Taurian themes, like the parable of the sower, because that's when you sow in Taurus, you know, so you can get some harvest in Virgo, etc., etc. And it's all on cue. It's in the Gospels. So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to... I did explain, you know, Saturn, where to look for him. Okay, in the week, he controls the day of revelry. That'd be Saturday, right? And then Sunday, of course, everybody gets good and goes to church and does their family things and repents from Saturday night, don't they? Yeah? Let's be good. Yeah, but Saturn, but that's because the sun is, you know, he's warm and he's gracious and beneficent, magnanimous. Whereas Saturn is cold and withdrawing, and rather than mankind being alert and awake and everything, they're sleeping during these hours of Saturn. So he's dealing with introversion and going within. That's where the light of the sun pierces matter. Here it quickens matter, as Manly P. Hall says. Here the sun is quickening matter, but here it pierces through matter. And here we go within. Here we go externalizing, you know, going touching stuff and seeing stuff with our eyes because the sun's out. So you see, it's not bad, but you can see where Saturn is associated with bad. Also during the day, you know, he's got his 12 to 4 rulership. During the year, bang, Saturnalia. And by the way, this is where they used to weep for Tammuz. You know, in Babylon, where they used to, where Ezekiel and Daniel were complaining that the children of Israel were weeping for Tammuz, you know. Why would you weep for Tammuz? Well, Tammuz Day is the 21st of December. And Tammuz is Saturn. And so, yes, the Romans were... you know, exchanging gifts. There was amnesty in Rome. You know, during the Saturnalia, I mean, there was a lot of revelry going on. Believe you me, people were getting blind drunk. Anything went. Anything went. You could do whatever you wanted on the Saturnalia. It was revelry. Big time. You know, gift-giving, merriment, Bacchanalia, Bacchus, of course, being the god of wine. That was the festival of the Bacchanalia. And we still say in Italy, per Bacco. You know, we say, good on you, Bacco, the god of wine, because he's blessed us. And the sun is the god of wine, Bacchus, who gives us wine in September all the time, every year. That's where the grapes get mature and pressed, and that is the season of wine. That is the season of bread, the bread and the wine. Because they are the two symbols, the greatest symbols by which we can honour this cycle. Wine being the blood of the gods, and you drink it and you say it's good. And that's the blood of the sun, the photons, because wine is made by photons. But it's the process, it's the end of the process. You see, you've got all this watering of the plants, and then you cultivate the plants, you weed them, you look after them, finally you reap your harvest, and then you bring them into, indoors, and then you press the wine, and then you let it wait for, to cure and to mature, and then you open your tap and you take out a glass and you drink it. That's the end of the road for the sun's work. You've got wine for all the winter now, so it's a great symbol of Christianity, Christ being the sun. And the bread, of course, so you grow your wheat and then you harvest the wheat, you get all the virgins in Virgo season to go out and bring in the wheat, and then you bring them into your mills, and then you crush that wheat, and it's a lot of work to crush that wheat. Then you bring it into your house and to your pantry, and then you make bread with it. You mix a little bit of yeast and stuff and everything, put it in the oven, take it out, and then you eat the fruits of the season. Right on cue, bread and the wine. And that's why when Christians go to have their Passover memorial around Easter time to do with the lamb, they take the sacraments of the bread and the wine. So look for Saturn, because when you understand the roles of the seven, they are all different. Our solar system, it works in such a manner. It works like this. You see, the sun is always in the middle kingdom. And there are 3 spheres above and 3 below. So it's in the fourth. It's in the middle. There is always the sun in the middle. And this is Ptolemaic, by the way. Remember the astrologer Claudius told me. And of course, when Copernicus discovered that the planets orbit around the sun, which they don't, they immediately went and attacked this guy. Because he said, the Earth was the centre of everything, and the sun, what's the sun doing? Rubbish! The sun's in the centre. What's it doing there in the middle of the planets? That's ridiculous. Well, it's not ridiculous, because this is in fact the structure of the sevenfold material place in which we live and move and exist. And one day we will go out of the rings of Saturn and to his father, Uranus, who is in the firmament. Okay, Uranus. Right, we got Saturn, and his father was Uranus. Well, Uranos in Greek means heaven. Saturn, of course, is time. So Saturn castrates his father and takes over the rulership. What that's telling you is that time, when you come into this solar system, you're under him. He's the boss, the Lord of the Rings. He's the Lord of the Rings because it's one ring to rule them all. And he has rings. He's the planet of rings. Okay, and he swallows his children. Anyone who comes into his kingdom must perish in time. So what happens is we go back to Uranus, we go back to the heavens, and out of the control of Saturn. Now this is going to happen. By the way, at the moment there is a beautiful Aries. Uranus is in Aries at the moment, and Saturn is in Libra. Saturn exalts in Libra. He's having a good time, and Uranus loves Aries. Uranus is up here, right now, in the skies. Take note of this because this is very, very revolutionary. It's in all of your heads. Uranus is causing a lot of social changes down below. Take note of these things. Uranus will be here for another 13 years in Aries. And Saturn will be here for a couple more years in Libra. And this is what's happening now around the world. This is the justice that's going on. The heads are rolling right now because Saturn is here in his sign of exaltation. Pluto's in Capricorn. That also has to do with judgment. Pluto being in Capricorn, over here, these three boys, they're changing the whole scenario downstairs. All right, guys, so now this is back to... what I'm doing now is I'm making a bigger version of what I did before, and the Tropic of Cancer is up here, right? So the sine wave, you can see the sine wave continuing on down that way, okay? So what we've done is we've made this much bigger, and there's the Tropic of Capricorn. And so all we need to do now is fill in the bits, okay? And there's the beautiful glyph for the Earth, because the ancients knew what they were doing, did they not? Now, what we've got is, take note of this, fire, earth, air, and water. All right? That's the pattern that the sun takes. Aries, Taurus, Gemini, this is the great gift that they left us. And they understood what all of this goes back to. And I'm going to show you that all of this goes back to how nature unfurls. There's nature unfurling. It's a Taurus. Planets are doing it, our bodies are doing it. We have the energy going up through the head and around in our Merkaba chariots. Okay? We are flaming chariots of fire, light bodies. Great, magnificent solar systems, galaxies unto ourselves. There's the galaxy. Check it out. 48 constellations, 360 acupuncture points, 360 degrees of arc. There it is. Aries in the head, with Perseus over here, bringing in the light and slaying Medusa right there, one of the deacons of Aries. And it goes around, and the sun goes through all 48 constellations every year. And as that's happening, that's your big brother above causing effects in you. You are being affected by all these motions and wheels. And here we are getting about our daily business and we don't know anything about it. And we don't even care anymore. How often now do we look up at the stars? I don't know whether a lot of people do, look out at night and just go, well, isn't that a beautiful sight? To look at the stars. And to think that those photons have been travelling for billions of years and finally they reach your eyelid and you don't delight in that, the pleasure of knowing that you're just receiving light that's been travelling for years and years and years to find it. Yeah, there's a lot of smog. But what is the structure behind this is the vector equilibrium or the cube octahedron, okay? The octahedron and the cube. Okay? That is this 12-fold structure. This is a perfect model of 12ness. This is where the 12 comes from, okay? From the vector equilibrium that supports this structure. That is what planets and galaxies are doing. 64 in the Flower of Life, 64 in the I Ching, 64 boards in the chessboard, squares, 64 codons in your DNA. 64 in Kabbalah. When you put the Kabbalistic trees together, you get your 64, the number. It's a precious number. The city of Melbourne has a grid. Have you seen the rectangular grid of the city of Melbourne? Open up your Melways and check out Melbourne, the city of Melbourne. Designed by Freemasons. Okay? You've got, that'd be Latrobe, Lonsdale. Anyway, look, you've got to check this out yourself. It's 64 grids. 64. It was designed that way. 64 blocks in the city of Melbourne. That's where I play my guitar, right there in the middle. In the middle of the 64. In the Burke Street Mall. But check it out. And it comes from this, 12. In the vector equilibrium. What we've got here too now, I'm going to go and try, I'm trying to be nice and slow because I do go very fast. So I want to just take my time with this and it'll sink in a lot better. You've got cardinal, cardinal, cardinal and cardinal. Okay? Fixed, 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 fixed. And, oh yes, I got pretty blue. Woohoo! Mutable, mutable, and mutable. Okay, so this is basically the science that they left us with, and everything here is all on cue with what's going on in your body and with what's going on upstairs. For instance, fire in Aries, that's the brain. Fire is electric. Well, in the morning, when the sun wakes up at 6 a.m. and you wake up at 6 a.m, first thing that happens is this turns on and your eyes turn on, both ruled by Aries and Mars. Right? It rules the top of the head. So you wake up here with fire because electricity needs to be working the electromagnetic computer that you have up here. Then the sun flips polarity from 8 to 10 and it gives you earth fixed. That would be the mouth. Earth rules this part of the body. So you put earth in your mouth, you see? And it's a magnetic polarity. Here, Gemini, that's Gemini and the two lungs. And Gemini needs air, mutable because it's probably changing the air, isn't it? Getting oxygen from the air, mutating it in the lungs and then sending it out as carbon dioxide and what have you. Well, that's air being mutated. It's all on cue. Everything's on cue. Even the cancer, the water of cancer. You know, the chest, it has to do with the chest, and the water, the milk of the mother. It's the motherly sign. So that's the water that she gives, the generation that she gives. Leo is the heart, fire. The heart is the pump that's warming the body, the hot blood, fire. It's on cue. So it's all physics. It's all science. This is the model below, as above. As above is exactly the same. In fact, as I'm going to get a chance to read from these books, you will see that the esoterists said that when you look up, you're looking at the brain cells of God. Those stars, they are the brain cells. And all of those Birkeland filaments and currents, they would be neurites and dendrites and synapses in your brain, in the brain of the God. It's a mind. It's a universal mind. So let's have a look at the rulers. As I said before, you've got the sun here, the seven-rayed God, according to Plutarch, the seven-rayed God. The moon, Mercury, Virgo, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. This is the gospel. God's spell. It's God's spell. It's not an evil spell. It's a spell. It goes forth. The spirit of El, God's spirit of El, is always going forth in the gospel because this is the gospel. Jesus goes around with his 12 disciples. He has John always by his side. He has Jupiter, Peter, his best friend, Jupiter. There are all the characters of the gospel, okay? The gospel. The gospel is dealing with a daily cycle and a yearly cycle and a backward processional cycle which lasts about 24,000 years. Once you work those out, then you will understand the science. Because the idea is to understand the solar system. Because in your understanding the solar system, you acquire solar consciousness. That's Christ consciousness. Otherwise, you're stuck with earth consciousness, which is neither bad or good. It's earth consciousness. But we need to shed that. And when we learn about the solar system and how it works, then we are able to embrace that consciousness. Then we go to the galaxy and we have galactic consciousness. And then the whole universe, we see how that works and understand it. And we have universal consciousness. Then we go back to unity consciousness. Rather than the dualistic consciousness of the lower earthly consciousness. It's down here where we get opinions about good and evil, which doesn't exist up there. Simply doesn't exist. It's our polarity that we have made. It's happening in our world. This is the message. These beautiful stories are in the message, but you won't see them if you're not looking. Have you ever noticed those 3D pictures that contain a three-dimensional picture, but you've got to stare at them? Yeah, right? Yeah. Have you ever seen those? Sometimes it takes a minute or 2 minutes. Some people never get it. They never see it. And that's what the Bible is. The Bible is like that. It's got these amazing allegorical stories that most readers are just walking straight past, Oh, Jesus said this and Jesus said that. Never ever understanding what is really happening. And this is the crime of the priestcraft. And those people are trained to not have eyes to see. You see, that's why the scriptures say, for ones who have eyes to see, you will see it. Now, you notice another thing with Saturn is, this is the symbol of Saturn. Did you know that, the hex? If you have a look at some photos on Google, some photos of Saturn, it's a big gas monster, you will notice that good old Saturn, who is not the Messiah, he's a very naughty boy, has a hex. That's a photo of Saturn. All right? See the hex? Now, this is the Star of David, David being Saturn. And you see a triangle pointing upward, which means the spirit going back to where it came from. And this is the matter. The feminine triangle pointing downwards. And that's the descent of our souls into matter. Okay, but the spirit will rise up again. You see, now as we go back into the age of Aquarius, Saturn rules Aquarius. So we've been in Pisces for 2,000 years. Jupiter's going to hand over to his daddy. That's his daddy. Remember, Jupiter defeated him when Saturn was eating all his children, and then his Saturn's wife, I think it was Hera, she took Jupiter and she hid him away, and then she put a rock in a blanket, and then she gave it to Kronos, and Kronos ate it and burped and whatever and said, "Thank you very much," And he thought that Jupiter was gotten rid of. But Jupiter was growing up on Crete, right? This is mythology, but it's talking about the fact that Saturn gave over his kingdom many thousands of years ago. See, if we go back 2,000 years ago, and another 2,000 years ago back into the heart of Egypt, Egypt ruled around here. This is Aries, the age of Aries. Greece and Medo-Persia ruled around here. Egypt was around here, and then we go back even further. We go back to a time when Saturn used to rule. Saturn loses his kingdom to his son Jupiter. And Jupiter is the one that gives it back to Saturn over here. Jupiter takes it away from his father and gives it back to his father. As we go back to Saturn, and believe you me, people know that the age of Aquarius is bringing Saturn back. And everything that Saturn grants, which are great blessings. The philosophers like Pico and Marsilio Ficino in the Renaissance times, they would greet each other with greetings of, you know, blessed be Saturn and we shall await his return, because there won't be any peace until Saturn returns. Okay? That's why you see the Star of David kicking around a lot, because these people, the Zionists, are pretending to be the true Saturnians, ushering in the new golden age, the one world order, with the UN and NATO, etc. These are the imitators. These are the pretenders to the throne. The age of Saturn will return, and it will be the Hermetic ones that will bring it back with peace and unity, not this criminal mob. But you have a look at this. The Bible always talks about things like, have you ever heard the beautiful expression, you shall be planted like a tree near a river? A tree is always happy near a river, isn't it? Because it draws water from under the table, the water table, yeah? And you see prosperous trees near a river. Well, that's what this is depicting, you see. A river works like this. There's mountains. Say, you know, you've got some mountains. And what happens is usually rivers come down off mountains, and they are tributaries to bigger rivers down the line. And here's the ocean. And just before the ocean there's like a delta where the main, you see, and so there's all these rivers that feed into it, right? So what's happening is the rivers are actually flowing back to the source, you see. But with a tree, if this is the trunk of a tree, and these are the branches and the leaves, these are all the leaves, and there's the roots that go under the ground, you find that one is coming from the roots and ascending to the heavens, whereas the river is descending from the heavens and going into the water. You see, it's this symbolism, and it's beautiful symbolism, but most people don't get it. They think, oh, a tree next to a river, that would be nice. And that's it. That's the extent of there, because they don't see the three-dimensional allegory that's in the Bible. It's in there. And that's what I'm going to try and draw out, okay? Not just the Bible, but all of the mythologies. I'm going to show how Hercules is in here. Hercules. Okay, let's have a look at Hercules. Where would the pillars of Hercules be? The most glorious place on the wheel. There he is. There is Hercules. And there's the Jewish system of Kabbalah, Boaz and Jachin. The pillars of Hercules, the two twins, Pollux and Castor, they always dominate the holy mountain of God. And right here, in between Gemini and Taurus, and Sagittarius and Scorpio, that's where the Milky Way intersects the stars. And you can see it here in my graph. You can see here, see the Milky Way faintly going through Scorpio and Sagittarius, and through, there it is there, faintly going through Taurus and Gemini. Right? That's where the Milky Way intersects, right here. So this is the milk, and in Cancer is the beehive, the milk and the honey. This is the land flowing with milk and honey. And the pillars of Hercules are always up here. Samson, when he pulls down the gateposts of Gaza, and then he goes and kills that lion and he eats the honey, and then he gets betrayed by Delilah the virgin, who betrays him to all of these enemies of the sun, the fall, starting with Saturn. Starting with Saturn in his exaltation house, but this is the fall of the sun. This sign is the exaltation of Saturn, but the fall of the sun. The sun here is wounded. Scorpio bites the sun in November. The backbiter betrays the Lord with a kiss. And here is Draco, the constellation of the dragon in Sagittarius. Jupiter is there, Peter, in the Garden of Gethsemane, where Scorpio betrays the Lord for 30 silver pieces. 30 days of the silver moon. This is all betrayal. This is the sun being betrayed as it goes down. But here, the sun is glorious. There is Hercules. Hercules is the sun passing through Gemini. conquering his holy mountain. Gemini is always there. It will always be there at the top. The sons of Zeus, Pollux and Castor, one divine, one human. And that's why you have the two pillars everywhere, in every system, the two pillars. There's the Arch of Titus, and he tells you, look at that, there's the Jewish menorah. That Jewish menorah is right there, because Titus, having destroyed Jerusalem. And there's the Jewish menorah, people. Ephesus, this is the, in Revelation, these are the 7 congregations that are in Asia. Ephesus, Thyatira, Philadelphia. Interesting. Philadelphia. Any Greeks?
Brothers.
Yeah, love of brothers. Would that be the two twins, Pollux and Castor, and the love that Pollux had for Castor, that he decided that he would give up his immortal life so that he could save his brother Castor, and they shared immortality every year. One would have immortality and one would have mortality. That's the love that they had, brotherly love. Philadelphia, right on cue. Here you have Sardis, which means the peak. Sardis means, Pergamos, which means the peak. Sardis, which means the king, the lion. Here you have, anyway, it's on the video. but these are the 7 congregations, okay? There they are there. These are the 7 planets, the 7 Elohim. That's what they are. The sun is the middle one. Saturn is the left one. That's the moon. So you've got Sunday to the middle, Monday over here, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Saturday is always the 7th. So here you have the arch of Constantine. See, this is Jupiter and Pollux and Castor, because when he climbs up that holy mountain and he goes through the pillars. See, that's why these megalomaniacs like Titus and Constantine made their arches, their pillars, because they want to be like Hercules. Who doesn't want to be? We all do. We all want to be like the star, the sun, the superstar, Michael, Jesus, King Arthur, Jason and his, Jason and his golden fleece, looking for the golden fleece. They're all looking for Aries. All of them. The Jews are looking for the Passover lamb. The Christians want the Lamb of God that takes away the sin of the world. Everyone wants the lamb. The lamb is here. You see? That's the lamb. Because everybody wants to live here. We all want to go to heaven. You go to heaven, there's no postal address for heaven. It's here, it's inside. You don't go knocking on St. Peter on the gates and, hey, St. Peter, is this, I think I've got the right address. I was told to come to, certain coordinates of the, of right ascension and declination, and I've found heaven. It's not going to happen. It's in you. The kingdom of God is in you, and this is the kingdom of God. This wisdom. So, it's all the sun. Look at this. See? They'll have, like, in Paris, they have the Arc de Triomphe, right? Well, where do they place that? Right in the Champs-Élysées. The Champs-Élysées, is that Élysée? Would that be the Champs-Élysées? Yes. The Elysian Fields, springtime. This is where all the magic happens. This is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. You see, mind, Aries, the head, electric. That's the nous. And that's the thinking. That's where we do our thinking. Here we speak. And Gemini, we do. Yeah? So we think, we speak, we do. And in fact, Aries is I am, I have, and I think, which is pretty interesting because that also is the process of doing. But the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit is how everything gets done in the whole world. First you think it, then you speak it, then you do it. Now, yeah, this is the thing, and we're waking up to this stuff. We're waking up to the fact that we come from the stars. Have you got any friends who swear that they come from Sirius or the Pleiades, or right? Well, let's have a think about it. Sam, what's your nationality?
Our background's from Syria.
Syria. Oh, let's have a look at that word, shall we? They're Syrian. They know where they come from. Right next door, there's a country called Canaan, originally. That's the Canaanites. That's canine. That would be the dog. Sirius is the dog star. So the Syrians, the Canaanites, the Assyrians, etc., they know where they come from. You come from Syria, from Sirius. Most of us do. So it's still there. You can see this in the country, in the country of origin. Look at Italy. They say that the Romans come from Romulus and Remus, and they suckled on a wolf. That'd be the dog, the canine, and Mars. They claim that their descent is from Mars. You see the two twins. That's a dog, isn't it? A wolf. They're telling you the two twins of Gemini, Romulus and Remus, who are suckling Sirius. Sirius is always here. That's where Sirius lives, man. She's in between Gemini and Cancer. The dog is, in fact, Canis Major is a deacon of Gemini. Gemini. Let's have a look at that, shall we? Here we've got, there it is, Canis Major, the great dog. That's where Sirius is. Right there in Gemini, the twins. So the Romans, they know what they're talking about. What they're trying to tell you is that, we have ancestry from the dog. Check it out. We come from a dog star. And what about the tribe in the country of Mali, just near Egypt, the Dogons? Have you heard of the Dogons? Yep. The doggone Dogons. They know more about Sirius than most scientists. In fact, every 50 years they celebrate the orbit of Sirius B around Sirius A. And we can't see Sirius B. All we can see is Sirius. And it's a beautiful, bright, in fact, the brightest star in the sky. And around it is spinning around this, it's a carbon star. It is 300 times harder than diamond. Sirius B, okay? So you've got Sirius, and then you've got Sirius B. Every 49.9 years it does an orbit. And in 89, when Sirius B came in between Sirius and our Sun, it caused the rotation of our Earth to slow down and speed up. I discussed this in the presentation last week. And so it has a direct effect. A star that we cannot see, 300 times harder than diamond. And it's spinning at 23 revolutions, 23 times a minute. A teaspoon of it would weigh tons on Earth. Tons, if not hundreds of tons. A teaspoon of the stuff from Sirius B. So, yeah, the Dogons, they every 50 years, they celebrate the orbit of Sirius B, a star that they can't see. How do the doggone Dogons know that? Okay, you can check this out on YouTube. Check it out, the Dogons and Sirius. This is the sort of stuff we need to look at, because we're remembering these things. I mean, Sam doesn't have to remember. He knows he's Syrian, and that's that. He's Syrian. Full stop. And the Aborigines in Australia, there's some tribes that call the sun Ra. Well, that's Egyptian. And there's Hopi Indians that talk about Ra. Same name as the Egyptians. How does that happen? Because this was once a universal system, and it was destroyed by the theocratic patriarchal religions, who have subverted the whole system and counterfeited it, and given us historical figures to take their place, to enslave us. Everything in the Bible is a two-edged sword. It will save you or enslave you. Have a look at the word soul, the sun. Does that sound like soul? Yeah, it does, because it's the soul of the solar system. See, the light of the sun bathes the spirit, the soul, and the flesh. Light partakes of three qualities, three natures, just like water: liquid, Water can be liquid, it can be solid, it can be gas. 3 states. That's light. That's why light is in the middle. That's why Jesus says, I am the light of the world. You don't go to the Father except through me, the fire. It's the sun, right? The light of the sun. And as the Neoplatonic philosophers said, there are 3 suns in the sky. When you look up to that orb in the sky, it's not just a physical body of hydrogen. It's a psychic person and it's a spiritual person, just like we are. And soul is anima. And this is very pertinent because I'm going to be discussing today how the philosopher lived his life in terms of diet, in terms of actions, in terms of speaking, and all of that. So we're going to really benefit with some practical stuff here because it's got to be useful, and it is useful. And that's what I'm going to be sharing with you about the Prisca Theologia, how useful it is. See, the word soul in Latin is anima. Okay? Soul, animal. Keep that in mind because this is very, very profound, what we're going to be learning. You know, so we see these words and we don't really think of what we're saying sometimes when we go to our church to go and see a minister. You know, we don't sort of put 2 and 2 together, minister, and we see moon and star, like a master. You know, when you get your master's degree, well, that would be a measure of the stars by degrees. Dong, 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 360. So when you get good and you study, you get your master's degree and they give you a square and a round black hat of Saturn. They've squared you. Now you're a square. Now you're fitting into the system. But you get your master's degree. In Italian, that would be maestro. Bis maestro. Would that be astro? Of course, because if you're going to be good, you're going to be a star. And think about the word Christ. Would you be a carbon crystal by any chance? We've been hexed with earth. We are solid, our bones. We have blood, liquid. We have gas, you know, oxygen and whatnot in our body. And we have fire. So everything's made up of these 4 things. The 4 rivers that flow out of the Garden of Eden. The waters above and the waters below. So this is all just water, right? All your atoms, they're just like coagulated, just like like when you get a scar, right? You know, you just wait a couple of weeks, and all of a sudden that coagulated blood has caused the skin to be there, and it looks like the scar's gone away, right? So you see the nature of blood. You see how precious blood is, that it actually is making bodies. But what's behind the blood? You see, the blood is flowing with fire and gas and liquid to make solids, coagulate. Coagulation as it goes through the process of temperature, motion, cohesion and solidity. We are carbon crystals. Every organic form is. That is Christ. Because what it's saying is, and the flesh came to dwell with man. And the Christ came to dwell in the flesh. And the Christ was made flesh. That's what it's talking about. It's talking about this was made flesh. We've all got crystals in our body. And what happens is that is what is causing us to remember. And as we drink of the finer consciousness and we expand our minds and leave them open, because without this science, there's no way you're going to go to heaven. There's no way. You can't fluke it. You cannot fluke it. It's not going to happen. And you won't be going to church where they keep you in the lower chakras to get this. It's not going to happen. They do it deliberately. Ra is an interesting word. There's a fellow in Egypt called Ramses. And That would actually be Ra Moses, people. Ra Moses. That's where Moses gets his name from, Ra Moses. And in fact, that's the 19th dynasty of Egypt when this guy turns up. First time Ramses appears. But in the dynasty prior to that, the 18th dynasty, we had Thothmoses. There's many spellings for this, by the way. There's many spellings for Thothmoses, the ancient pharaoh of the 18th dynasties. In fact, Thothmoses III, that's the one that they reckon is the founder of Rosicrucianism and all of, in fact, all of the Freemasonic schools come from that 18th dynasty, most of them. Okay, yeah, Thothmoses. There's a statue of him done in that I think it's granite, or what's it called, diorite. Diorite, and it's very hard. And you can see that Thothmoses III. These guys, they pay a lot of tribute to this guy, but this is where they all come from, those dynasties. All right, I just want to share a few more little points with you. I'm just going through some words here, okay? So you can study the nature of words, because when the written alphabet came into history and civilized us, along came the spells, you see? And with the spells, they sort of bound up all their spells in one book, and they said, oh, this is from God. And if you don't do what it says in there, we're going to kill you. Okay? You get to die. It's a good book. It's great. You know? And we have a special interpretation of it, by the way, too. Yeah? Okay? That's how the Christians treated the indigenous Indians when they went to the Americas. Oh yeah. They had this one. I'd say they would have put this in their left hand, because you need your right hand to have a sword in there to cut heads off people who don't listen to this book. And that's what they did. They decapitated hundreds of millions of indigenous people who knew this. So the 7 days of the week would be Sunday, the moon, Mars. Wednesday is Mercury, Buddha. That's Jupiter, Zeus, god of gods. That's Venus, Friday. And good old Saturn Day. Okay, let's put him in there like that. Okay, I'm going to make a point of him. This is the Japanese language, okay? I'm doing some Japanese kanji here. I didn't actually bring the kanji, I forgot, but doesn't matter. The meaning of the word is what matters. Sun is Nichi. Nichi means heat, fire, light. So you go to Japan and you've got right on cue, you've got Sunday where Nichiyobi is, right on cue, and it's heat, fire and light. Pretty interesting, isn't it? What about the next one? Getsu, that's the moon. Luck and fortune, that has to do with the moon, the goddess of luck. She is the goddess of luck. Getsu, right on cue, Monday. Ka, Mars. Fire, birth. Fire, Mars, birth. In fact, the 25th of March is when Gabriel comes down to Mary and he says, guess what? You're going to have a little son, and he's going to be called Jesus. Because that's where impregnation happens, the blossom, the sperm of the sun. And in Japan they celebrate Sakura, and in Rome on the 19th of April they celebrate the festival of Flora, flowers. Flowers, impregnation, fruit, harvest, preservation and survival. Then it starts again. Every year, Jesus, bang, has sex with the moon. And how do you know that? Well, because that's where Christians celebrate the Easter. It's full moon. Notice, Easter's always after the full moon. The first Sunday after the full moon, which the Jews celebrate on Nisan the 14th. And that's impregnation, because the moon is always opposite the sun in the Holy Mother of God, the Virgin. So when Easter happens, it's when the sun has crossed over first Sunday after the first full moon, because the full moon must be in the Virgin. The Virgin goes from here to here. You see, her glyph, Mary, it's like pretty much like a Mary, whereas Scorpio's glyph is turned up with it's an M with an arrow pointed up, because all of this area used to belong to the Virgin. Sui means water, Suiyobi. So that's Kayobi. Suiyobi. This is Thursday's Moku. Wooden, tree. How about this one? Kin. Gold. Venus. Money. Because she's the one that gives wealth, the second house in the zodiac. She's always got the gold and the money. And how about our good friend Saturn? Well, what would that be now? We've already discussed his other name in Greek, Chronos. What does Chronos mean? Time. Well, the Japanese do means time. Time, door, and dirt. You see, guys, when you start looking for these things, you will find them. The science is there. What I'm trying to do, or not trying, I am doing, is syncretizing it all. Okay? In honour of Pico and Giordano Bruno. Okay? That's the book that got him burnt at the cross on the 17th of April, 1600. That book. The Expulsion of the Triumphant Beast. And he is saying, he died because he's saying in there, we've got to go back to Hermes. The world must return to Hermes to be saved, to bring back sanity, because religion ain't working. It doesn't work. It binds people and makes them fools and slaves. And this liberates. The Hermetic revolution was the Renaissance. It was based on pure Hermeticism. The founding of the Republic of the United States of America was pure Hermes. And I'm going to read to you from Thomas Paine. He's the guy who got the revolution going, by the way. Thomas Paine. You've got to read this guy. It's all about Hermes. All of it. Okay, I'm going to read from here. Thomas Jefferson, all those guys, they were Hermetists. And the Republic, which frees, is Hermes.
What do you make of the suggestion that a certain portion of them were Freemasons, and what association did Freemasonry have with Zionism all the way back then?
Yeah, look, Masons, like everyone else, have been co-opted and invaded and overtaken by the Vatican and all its good little soldiers. Has many foot soldiers. The Jesuits, the Bilderbergers, the Trilateralists, the Council on Foreign Relations, any buffoon like a Henry Kissinger or a Zbigniew Brzezinski, these imbeciles who will sell their mothers for, you know, a pocket full of pennies. Traitors to mankind. But the Vatican runs all of that. It has gone around all around the earth, co-opting movements and changing the nature of them. You know, the Green Movement, for instance, it might start with genuine grassroots principles, and then all of a sudden someone comes knocking on the door and says, hey, we've got $1 million for you, would you like that? Oh yeah, well, there you go, there it is, but just sign here on the dotted line, and just what we're going to do is we're going to have one of our, we're just going to have someone to sit on your board for you, you know, and you know, help you make good decisions about how to spend that money in the future. And that'll be a Vatican agent. It's all the Vatican, it's all Rome. The elites run Rome. It's the biggest corporation in the world, and it hates this Hermetic wisdom. It has been persecuting it for 2,000 years, okay? Since the days of Hypatia and Theodosius in Rome, who said, just burn them all, burn them, kill them. They went around and pillaged and destroyed all of the universities and temples that were bequeathed to us by the Hermetists. In Alexandria, there was the Temple of Serapis, and they went down and they pulled down Serapis and they burned him to the ground, and they destroyed the library in Alexandria. And there was hundreds of years, or in fact it hasn't stopped. Only 500 years ago they destroyed all the Mayan codexes. Only 4 survived, the Popol Vuh. And you know, this is what they do. They go around destroying evidence that this existed. It existed, and it's coming back, and it will destroy all the fictions. This is here to come, to stay forever. We'll never forget this again. It's coming back. This is Hermes, guys, and rejoice that it's coming back. Have a look at Libra, the point of equilibrium, isn't it? Libra, those scales, those beautiful scales. You see, once you understand this science, you understand what's going on. In the body of the human being is something very special that's going on. And that would be that. You see? Aries at the head, and the sine waves goes through the scales of Libra. Look at the glyph for Libra. I mean, it's sitting there where 6 p.m. is, and September the 21st, the beginning of the Red Sea. Right? So in both of those two cycles, it stands for that. What would that be? That's the glyph. Does that look like a sunset to you? Or a sun passing through the equinox, the equator? Yes, it is. And opposite there is where the Japanese have their car brand Nissan. Nissan means March. And you see the symbol for Nissan? It's got the sun going through the equator. These are things to look out for. The sun. The sun dominates everything. It's all about the sun. In fact, that's a painting there, famous painting that an Englishman did down in New Zealand about 150 years ago. And what you can see, that's a tattooed warrior, okay? And you will notice that the lines on the top of the face here, this all has to do with sun worship. This is the sun, just like this mask is. And you see you'll have 13 lines down one side and 14 lines down another side. 13 times 14 equals 182. Any idea what 182 is all about? It's solar science, pure science. Well, it's a half of the year, exactly. Okay? It's a half of 365 days. And what it's representing is 1/2 of everything of the year. Now, but it's a symbolic number. It's not actually accurate, because this half of the year is exactly 187 days long, and this one is 178 days long. Did you know that? Yeah. The sun above the horizon takes 187 days. And below the horizon, it takes 178 days and a quarter. Marcus Manilius, in his wonderful poem, he talks about this when he says, take note that the crab and the twins and the bull all rise upside down. Because he said, these signs, where Sirius is, Sirius, and these signs, he says, they are slowing down the sun. You see? They drag and pull on the sun. That's why they come up, upside down. This is poetry. It's not scientifically accurate. But what's going on is this. You see, this guy's telling you that there's 182 days, and it's from the solstice through the equator to the other solstice. Or this line here would be the equator, the equinoxes, and this line here would be the solstice. And so I'm not sure which way it is, but that's what it's talking. This is also talking about solar science. You'll notice that there's different amount of numbers on this side as opposed to the lines on this side. Okay, they're doing that. It's not a mistake. It's deliberate, because it's trying to encode special formulas for the sun. And you know, like the Korean flag is doing the same thing, really. You know, I think it goes that way. Spirit, fire, and matter, water. It's telling you the same thing. Fire, earth, air, and water. So, and the reason for this now, it's easy to work out when you know that on January the 4th, the Earth is at perihelion with the Sun. It's 4 million miles closer to the Sun than at July the 4th. So, where would January the 1st be? Let's have a look now. We've got 21st. January the 4th would be around about here, and July the 4th would be around about here. That's perihelion. Helion is the Sun. So it's basically, it's perigee. Perigee. So let's, in our elliptical orbit, if there's the Sun, our Earth will be like, in its orbit, it will be like here, closer to the Sun, 4 million miles, by the way, and it has nothing to do with summer or winter. That the Earth being closer to the Sun down here in July the 4th, January the 4th, perihelion, that has got nothing to do with the temperature. Nothing at all. That's the tilt. Okay? So this is perihelion, and this is aphelion. Aphelion is here. July the 4th. You know, when you get all your Independence Days. All countries around the world celebrate, whether it's Canada, you know, Venezuela, whatever, many countries around the world have their independence over here because the Sun is conjuncting Sirius. Sirius is the one who gives independence and freedom. She is the Statue of Liberty. It's Sirius, the mother of the system. She dominates the whole star system that we're in. Okay, so that's why there's drag. Obviously there's drag because if we're in a binary with Sirius, this is how it would work. There's Sirius and there's our Sun, and we have an elliptic orbit, right, that we go around. Sirius also does this, like that. So there's our Sun, and our Earth is going around anti-clockwise like that in its orbit. And so this would be, here would be perihelion. And here, so here the Sun would be in Capricorn, and here the Sun would be in Cancer. So you see what's happening is because these two stars are flying towards each other, and by the way, Sirius is hurtling towards us at 12 miles a second. She's flying towards us, man, and with that Sirius B going around it. And every time Sirius B goes around, there's havoc on the Earth. Havoc. And she's hurtling towards us. So her speed coming, she's blue shifted now because for 12,000 years, Sirius has been observed to be red, right? When she turned the corner and they're hurtling towards each other, what's happening now is the Sun is being pulled up, and of course it leaves all this drag, which is this drag here. Right? Because when the Sun is in Sirius, when the Sun is heading towards Sirius, and it's in that sign, it's being pulled up. That's the drag. But that is also explained by the vortex solar system. Okay. Now in 5 minutes we're going to have a break, so get a coffee and walk around a bit. But I've got some juicy stuff in the next 2 hours. Some really good stuff. I'm going to spend a lot of time on the diet of the philosophers, okay, and stuff like that, and I want to try and go through a whole bunch of quotes and stuff from various books and sources that establish this as a science. What do you think of that? Now, I'm just going to read something really delicious from this book, Alvin Boyd Kuhn, and it's called The Tree of Knowledge. Just magnificent, explaining how our descent into matter and the experiences we acquire with this fleshly body, with conditioned consciousness, Because you see, as we descend through those rings of those planets, we get conditions placed upon us. And they are heavy cloaks, heavy garments that the planets bestow on us. And in effect, they are handicaps, really, obstructions that we have to surmount. So, but in our ascent, this is a beautiful little illustration that Alvin Boyd Kuhn makes to help one appreciate what's going on. He says, we can conceive the dramatist as desiring to veil the open sense by a playful ruse. Well, he's talking about this drama, this story of us coming down. He says, much as a rich and indulgent father, head of a great business concern, would offer his son full participation in the enterprise, yet at the start of the son's serious career, he would say to him, you are to be one of us in the management, but lest you try to take hold of your prerogatives before you have mastered all the details of the business, to know the right from the wrong course of procedure, I must send you out into the factory to learn it all from the bottom up. Yeah, sweep some floors, boy. And then when you learn all the the mechanisms and all the procedures, then you'll be fit to sit in my seat one day. So this sums up almost incontestably the gist of the logic of the situation. Let the argumentative chips fall away where they may, and it does bring out rational light when all previous exegesis has left the matter shrouded in Stygian darkness. It may be the final basis of all sanity in our religious psychology to understand that even God cannot give unto his children, beloved children, the bliss and blessedness of divine life without imposing on them the ineluctable condition that they earn the right to it by developing the capability for it in the time-tempting mill of evolution. Well said. Alvin Boyd Kuhn. Anything you read of Alvin Boyd Kuhn, and this is a must. Okay? Who is this King of Glory? Because he has exposed all of these dramas in here and how Jesus is the Son, S-U-N, of God in the skies. But what it means to us is consciousness. It's also referring to consciousness. It's also referring to our heart chakra. It's also talking about electricity. L. You see, why do you think the light and electricity was called electricity with an EL, L. That's one of the Elohim. Well, because that's where it comes from. Electricity comes from L. So now just a few other little interesting points. He's got such exquisite language that I just have to read some more of his. The artistry of ancient allegorism caught the world at a low point of its intelligence and mired the interpretive mind in Christianity in the worst slough of misconception ever to afflict the human fancy. Our dullness of comprehension and blank stupidity in handling our great heritage of ancient mythicism have marred and scarred the face of history. Absolutely true. Bizarre and almost ridiculous as it sounds in the ears of modern people, it can be said truly that philosophy is and must ever be man's true saviour. Yeah, so Manly P. Hall, the pineal gland. What does he have to say about the pineal gland? Well, the gland itself is not the third eye, but only the reflection of that organ, its counterpart or symbol in the material constitution. It is a relic bearing witness to an ancient faculty, and because it has endured through these eras of spiritual obscuration, promises the ultimate restoration of the function to which it bears witness. The true power of the gland is in its spiritual counterpart, even as the whole strength of man abides in his visible nature. The true third eye cannot be seen by the ordinary vision, but is visible to the clairvoyant as a vibrant spectromatic aura surrounding the outer body of the gland and pulsating with an electric light. The first Sephirah, Kether, everything I've just showed you, this is what syncretism's all about. There's the Kabbalah, there's all the tarot cards, there's the 22 paths of the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, all the alphabets. Here are the planets, there's Mercury, there's Mars, here is the zodiac, Aries in the head, the fire, Taurus in the throat, the earth, Gemini air, Cancer water. This is the whole system. Here's the Eastern chakra systems, you see, and how they correspond with the Jewish. So this one here gets 2. There's 2. And this one here, the blue chakra, the throat chakra. And this one, you see, this is supposed to be the pineal gland. And this is supposed to be the two hemispheres of the brain. You see, and in this system there's Kether. And what he's saying here is Kether, the crown, signified the pineal gland. And that the next two Sephiroth, Chokhmah and Binah, one placed on either side of it, were the 2 lobes of the cerebrum. Marsilio Ficino was the guy who translated the Hermetica, and basically the guy who spoke about the Prisca Theologia and reminded the world of the ancient teachings of Hermes. And he spoke a lot about the sun and the planets and how they work. Right? So I'm just going to read a little bit from this book. The first book of the Hermetic opus contains a story with familiar Gnostic themes. Pymander, the divine mind, of course, this is Marsilio, he translated the Pymander. Pymander is the mind, the 12, that's the mind over matter. See, mind is 12, matter is 7, okay? So he was the first one to translate it, so he should be able to talk about it. Appears to Hermes, and so divine mind appears to Hermes and describes the origin of nature. God brought forth a demiurge, he relates, a god of fire and breath, who fashioned 7 governors, who envelop with their circles the sensible world. All of the lower world depends upon the 7 governors. Then the Father God created a man in his own image, a man so beautiful that God fell in love with him. He allowed the man to enter the sphere of the demiurge and there to behold the 7 governors. Obviously the pattern of mankind comes from here. That's what it's talking about. But he allowed that pattern to be introduced into this solar system. Okay? Because that's where the creation happens. The creation did not happen here on this earth as literalist evolutionists teach, Darwinians. Or as the theocratic types will teach you, oh, God made Adam from the dust, literally, and Eve from the rib. You know, it's literal to them because they cannot see the 3 dimensions that are coming up out of this. They can't see those hidden pictures because they're not looking and they don't care to look. They want someone else to tickle their ears in church. Oh yes, priest type. You know, who cares what you do in your private time? Probably, you know, with little boys. They don't care about that. And they offer no protection to their children when they bring them to church because there is no protection for children in any of the Christian corporate churches because they don't deal with pedophiles in, you know, with justice and out there and the law and the police and everything. No, it's all in-house. We take care of this in-house because we don't want Jehovah's name to be spoiled. Poor Jehovah. And of course God is concerned about that, isn't he? Oh, don't you dob Brother Smith in because he's just raped 6 boys in the congregation. Don't you do that. I've got a name to protect up here, please. This is how they think and they love it. I've seen it. I was a Jehovah's Witness for 22 years and I saw how they treated pedophiles. Just like that. Just as I have said. It's disgraceful. It's murderous. They are murderers. This This is what frees. Then the Father God created a man in his own image, a man so beautiful that God fell in love with him. He allowed the man to enter the sphere of the demiurge. That's Kronos, the demiurge. He's the boss of the demiurge, Saturn. And there to behold the 7 governors. They too fell in love with him and gave him part of their rule. Finally, the man broke through the circles of the governors to know the power of God himself. And that's what we're doing today. We're learning how to break through the circles of the governors to get to God himself, which is who? None other than you. Because there ain't no God out there but you. It's all us. It's all one. One consciousness. And that's what these guys knew. And they were trying to save us from the division of all the 30,000 Christian denominations that have separated us. Methodist on one corner and Presbyterian. And they all say, oh, it's good to have the churches in our community because it brings unity into the community and it brings cohesiveness and all sorts of Christian values. Really? No. The opposite. They are very perverse and divisive. And we'll never get any of this. Never. Until the churches are gone and religion and spirituality returns. Gifted with all of this power and knowledge, the man realized to nature below the beautiful form of God, and nature loved him, having seen his beautiful features reflected in the water and his shadow on the earth. The man too saw a form like his own reflected in the water and wished to be united with it, a wish immediately accomplished. Nature and man were united in love. Chaos and eros. Love and chaos. Thus, mankind has a double nature, mortal in his body, immortal in the essential man. His mortal nature is under the dominion of the planets, but his immortal nature is not. That's reading from page 56 of The Planets Within, of Marsilio Ficino. Now, the Red Sea is your blood. Alvin Boyd Kuhn again. Turns up in all the interesting books, this guy, because he writes them. And these are the books that you shouldn't read if you go to church. Because you'll get all confused and the devil will pull you away from church now, he will. And he'll deceive you. And he says here, for if Proclus is right, those infinite points of light are the scintillating brain cells of the mind of God. It is declared that a normal human brain has 4 quadrillion brain cells. We can generously allow God a few quintillions at least. That's what astrology is. It's studying the anatomy of God. God being the physical universe. You see, in this Hermetic system there are 2 gods. There's the causal God, who remains still. And that God there is probably best described by Pseudo-Dionysius when he talks about this wonderful cause. Let me just share a little bit from here. He talks about divine names, okay? Because this guy is a Neoplatonist of the 4th century, and he's not going to put a name on God. You know, the Hindus call it Anama, with a privative A in front of Nama. Nama means name. Anama means no name. You don't name this dude. You don't name it. There's no name. If you can name it, it's not him. It's not it. It's something else, and you're fooled. Okay, so this is what they say. This is why we must not dare to resort to words or conceptions concerning that hidden divinity which transcends being, apart from what the sacred scriptures have divinely revealed. For if we may trust the superlative wisdom and truth of Scripture, the things of God are revealed in each mind in proportion to its capacities. And the divine goodness is such that, out of concern for our salvation, it deals out the immeasurable and infinite in limited measures. Just as the senses can neither grasp nor perceive the things of the mind, just as representation and shape cannot take in the simple and the shapeless, just as corporal form cannot lay hold of the intangible and incorporeal. By the same standard, the truth of truth, beings are surpassed by the infinity beyond being, intelligences by that oneness which is beyond intelligence. indeed, the inscrutable one is out of the reach of every rational process. I can go on. I mean, the divine names is full. This is the kind of divine enlightenment into which we have been initiated by the hidden tradition of our inspired teachers, a tradition at one with Scripture. So this does not conflict with anything in the Bible. It's just that the people who are interpreting it think that it has got nothing to do with each other because they don't understand it. You see? And he's saying divine mind gave it to us. I mean, I read this in my first presentation on astrology from Firmicus Maternus, saying how divine mind through Mercurius, Hermes Trismegistus, gave us the secrets through careful observation, many, many years of observing the stars and what they do. So he says, as long as religions cling to the lower rungs of the scale of interpretation of their scriptures, there will be endless points of difference between them. If they will lift the sense to the upper third and fourth levels, the apparent outer grounds of difference will dissolve in the unity and harmony of a lofty conceptual enlightenment. Here's another great one, Manly P. Hall, the Occult Anatomy of Man, in which here he explains that the Holy Land is the body. And he exposes all of these from the Scriptures. I'll just give you some examples. The sacred river is the spinal canal, which has its source among the peaks of the mountains. The holy men in their retreats represent the spiritual sight of the human brain, and there are 7 sleepers of the Quran who must remain in the darkness of their caves until the spirit fire vitalizes them. The brain is the upper room referred to in the Gospels, where Jesus met with his disciples. And it is said that the disciples themselves represent the 12 convolutions of the brain. It is these 12 convolutions which later send their messages by means of the nerves into the body below to convert the Gentiles or preach the gospel in the Middle Earth. You see? So Jesus is up here, the king, and the 12 convolutions of the brain. And through the nervous system, he sends his disciples to go preaching to the Gentiles below. And the Gentiles are down here in Sodom and Gomorrah, because that bottom chakra, where sodomy happens, is called Sodom. And the one above is Gomorrah. You see, it's the Holy Land. The Jordan is here, it's in the head. And the Jordan starts from the feet of Aquarius. You see, Aquarius is pouring down, and he starts that river flowing, the Eridanus, and the Eridanus goes all the way to here, to the Pleiades. The 7 sisters. Who are the 7 sisters? They're everywhere. Those 7 just appear everywhere in our culture. Subaru, the Pleiades. It's the pineal gland, right? There it is. And that's the Eridanus. You see, so John the Baptist, January. Janus is John. That's just John. Don't be fooled. This month used to be called the baptism month, because as the sun climbs up from the 25th of December here, he gets a hell of a baptizing by January the Baptist, the water bearer. And he says, look, the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. And he baptizes him in the Jordan. That's the Eridanus. There's a lot of this stuff in here. Okay, I'm not going to be able to dwell much on this, but Pythagoras taught on the internet, or you can go to the Theosophical Society on Russell Street. They have a lot of this Manly P. Hall stuff, and most of these guys, you can order it through them. Pythagoras said that that the head of the human being is where the northern stars are. And that's where Cephas is. See, Cephas, right, is in the constellation of Pisces, over here. Cephas. That's another name for, in the Bible, for the Apostle Peter. Jupiter. Jupiter. That's Peter. Peter. And this is the head, you see, according to Pythagoras. And also on the throne there is Ursa Major from here, you see. They all, Ursa Major and Ursa Minor, they all are close to the throne of God, which is all the stars that encircle the northern pole in the northern hemisphere. That's it there. Polaris is right at the top. It's an acupuncture point. Polaris is right here. And the whole system, this is the dome. You see when you go to the Vatican, you see this dome. Well, that's what it's telling you. That's Polaris in the centre. And all the rest is, all of those stars, they don't set. That in the northern hemisphere, they don't set. Just like our Southern Cross does not set. We see it annually in the skies. It never sets in Australia. Right? So the northern star, that describes a circle, which is 30 degrees from the Polaris, or 30 degrees from the centre. Everything that is 30 degrees from that, that's Mount Meru, Shambhala. That's Mount Zion. That's where Cephas rules. Cephas has his foot on Polaris. He stands there like that for 3,000 years, man, and he rules this particular age that we're in, of Pisces. So the spirit not only leaves, but also enters the body through the crown of the head, probably giving rise to the story of Santa Claus and his chimney. Chimney.
That's the one I had. The one with the mushroom.
Yeah. The Amanita muscaria mushroom. Yeah. Santa Claus is always red, white and black, just like that little mushroom. Yeah. Because that's what it's all about. Because what does the Amanita muscaria mushroom do? Well, it causes you to have an out-of-body experience. And if you can have an out-of-body experience, what does that mean? That means that you're not your body. Now, they don't want you to know that, do they? The Vatican has spent so much money in putrid, filthy, lying propaganda to make us believe that we are a society of slaves that are our bodies. And those bodies can go out and get a career, get a job, get a sports career. Or let's pay, let's pay David Beckham $40 million for 1 year to go to Galaxy, or whatever. So you see all these sportsmen who are getting $100 million a year. And then you see 2 billion of our brothers who are starving to death. And these sportsmen love to get on these Fox, lifestyle shows to show their, beautiful mansions in Doubleday, Sydney. And, oh yes, I've got a $5 million house in Australia, I've got a $6 million house in Liverpool. Some of our Australian soccer players, do this. Yeah, and I think to myself, you buffoons. You buffoons, you think you're your body, do you? You think you own the molecules that have assembled your house in Doubleday, do you? Well, this is the sad story for these people who have descended and gotten themselves entangled. Entangled because, you see, when we come down here, we already make our pact not to be deceived by the priest and the salesman on every corner. And you look around, man. You go to the city, Melbourne, you see the priest and the salesman. The biggest and the best buildings are the cathedrals and the banks. And they work together, the bullion brokers and the people who put the spell on the money. They must put their spell on the money, and they work together, and they always have, and this cabal is about to be undone. By what? By our consciousness. All evil destroys itself like a cancer. It will eat itself until it is finished and consumed. Just watch how the Rockefellers start killing the Rothschilds, and the Rothschilds start killing the Morgans and the Schiffs and the Warburgs, and you watch what happens now. You'll see heads are rolling because Saturn, here, the guy that they pay so much homage to and harvest his energy to enslave the rest of mankind, is going to give them a bit of justice. The two lobes of the cerebrum were called by the ancients Cain and Abel. Cain, Abel. Male, feminine. This guy kills this guy. In fact, that's why they won't let you write with your right hand. You see, because the left brain is masculine and it dominates this hand ruled by Mars. That's Mars, this is Mars. This is the killing hand, you see. If they can get you, and if they see you working with your sinister hand, left hand, they soon smack that out of you and you're writing with your right hand. Yeah, to keep you really unbalanced, rather than teaching us to be ambidextrous, right? Or perhaps if you're inclined to be left-handed, we'll go for it, and that will balance out the two hemispheres. They want us in here, because this fella, he sees the trees, he don't see the forest. Okay? They need the feminine side to do that. And have much to do with the legend of the curse of Cain, which is literally the curse of unbalance. You see, this is the unbalance is happening here, where Orion, that's Cain, is killing the bull, Abel. Abel is a bull, Abel, El. And that's what's happening here. The two hemispheres are here in the brain. The human brain is here, you see, and Cain, Orion, is killing the bull, his brother. And that's the unbalance, or the spirit of equilibrium. For the murder of the spirit of equilibrium, Cain is sent forth a wanderer upon the face of the earth. The spinal cord is an elongation of the brain, and some authorities even claim the cord to be capable of intelligence throughout its entire length. This cord is the flaming sword which is supposed to have stood at the gates of the Garden of Eden. The Garden of Eden is in the skull, within which is a tree bearing 12 manner of fruit. Remember I said this is the Garden of Eden. It can't be here. This is where all the vital organs are of the body, and these are the best of the vital organs. This is the heavens, the earth, and hell. Right? Huh? And so there is where all the good stuff's happening. In fact, Aries is the mid-heaven. I discussed that in my astrological presentation 2 weeks ago, where this guy explains clearly that the ancients gave us the chart of the universe, the birth chart of the universe. And in that, Aries is the head. Because it is. It's the mid-heaven, rather, not the head. Aries is the mid-heaven. See, in astrology, the mid-heaven is when the sun climbs to that point. And in your chart, it deals with the 10th house. And that's Capricorn. And because Capricorn is where Saturn is. Saturn. So the 10th house, you see, although the houses go down from the ascendant, they go down this way. That'll be the first, second, third, when you're doing your astrology. To understand the meaning of the house and what it stands for, you have to go this way. So if Aries is the first house, which is to do with your life and you, Taurus is the second house, which has to do with material abundance and wealth because of Venus, etc. This one has to do with short trips and brothers. This has to do with family. Yeah, this has to do with pleasure. This has to do with illnesses, the house of death, etc. When you get to this guy, that's your mid-heaven. Because when the sun, remember Hercules climbing up to the pillars of Gemini, and he finally gets up there and he slams down those pillars because he's conquered the holy mountain. Well, that's where you get your honours, and it happens in Capricorn, where Saturn is. Because Saturn's the old man who does 30-year orbit. No one does a 30-year orbit. Jupiter's 12, Mars is 2, trumps them all. So he stands, he's old man Kronos, you know, and he stands there and he's waiting for the honours. That's why I always look at your 10th house in astrology and see what planet is there and what goods are there for you to see, you know, how you will be honoured spiritually, not necessarily by the world. You don't need to worry about that. You know, you don't have to get an Academy Award or anything like that, because that's, you need to sell your soul to get to that level. Most people, trust me, 99% of the actors have sold their souls to get to the top there. And one clear evidence of that is they're totally silent about the fact that they've been manipulated and handled by CIA controllers ever since they entered and sold their souls to Hollywood. They won't tell you that. But there's a few guys getting out there. There's a guy called Randy Quaid, the brother of Dennis Quaid, who revealed a couple of months ago about the Star Whacker Club that exists in Hollywood. There's a certain bank or certain banks that go around whacking guys like Heath Ledger, Michael Jackson to get at their estates, you see. And this bank went on record, well, at least Randy Quaid said, you can see this on the internet, on YouTube, he said, there's a bank that told me that said, we prefer dead actors, they don't get in the way. What do you think happened to Marilyn Monroe and Elvis Presley and Rudolph Valentino and James Dean, etc.? People. These guys, there's some smart lawyers that have placed themselves in Hollywood and they are there to bring you to fame and glory and then kill you and take your money. That's what they did to Michael Jackson. It was a whack job. Simple as that. There's plenty of proof. But the reason I'm going into that, on down that tangent, is the fact that this is the knowledge that will bring us back to sanity. And this is the one that they are scared of the most. This is the great heresy that has been persecuted for thousands of years. Because this is empowerment. This is unity consciousness. This teaches you how to think. Whereas Rome has taught us what to think, because she likes to divide and conquer. And let who shall be deceived, let him be deceived. We're here to administer the affairs of God. Because that's what they do. The Vatican administers all of the affairs of God in our courts. When you get a written summons, that's coming from a scribe notary. A scribe notary, right? Jesus, in the Gospels, condemns 5 classes of people, right? Unless you're aware of it. He's got the Sadducees. I'm spelling this wrong, I know that. Please don't pay. The Pharisees, the scribes, lawyers, and tax collectors. That's it. And who are they? Are they still around? Oh yeah, you better believe it. These guys, scribes, scriver, that's a V by the way, sorry about my bad writing. Scriver notary. Notaries. That's a writer of indulgences. I've exposed this in other videos of mine. You see the scribes? That's why he doesn't like the scribes. The Pharisees, these are people that, you know, like your priests and your money changers. These are the money ones. These are the law guys. These are the guys who you know, get big educations to go into politics. You know, like your John Howards and your Rudds and Gillards and these creeps to run us. And you know what? They're lawyers. Oh yeah, they study law because they want to bind you. And they know how to bind you. It's called statutory legislation. It's not the law of God. We're only bound to one law, and that is don't hurt anybody.
If we are all one, why are they like that?
Because they've divided us. This unites. They have divided us. The elites that are doing this, dividing us, are causing you to have your label, you know, Jehovah's Witness, Mormon, Pentecostal.
So we all go back to one then too.
If this doesn't take over the whole planet in the next 10 years, it's all over.
Okay.
It's coming back. It will come back. Hermes has always promised to come back and return. Okay? One only needs to read the Lament of Hermes, right, from the Hermetica, where Hermes predicted, and so did Hesiod, by the way. Actually, I'll read these. That's why I brought these along, because you know, I don't know. I've done all my notes and I'm happy. Now I'm just sort of leaving this time to sort of deal with loose things that I brought along. Okay, so because it all pertains to the holy science, as above, so below. When you know above where all the planets are and what they're doing, you know below. And you know what's going to be happening for you. This is what, in Works and Days by Hesiod, he said, notwithstanding this, he was talking about the Iron Age, for now truly is a race of iron. He just explained the Golden Age, the Silver Age, the Bronze Age, the Hero Age, and the Iron Age. And he says this, "And the gods shall lay for sore trouble upon them. But notwithstanding, even these shall have some good mingled with their evils. And Zeus will destroy this race of mortal men also, when they come to have grey hair on their temples at their birth. The father will not agree with his children, nor the children with their father, nor guest with the host, nor comrade with comrade, nor will brother be dear to brother as aforetime. Men will dishonour their parents, and they will grow quickly old, and will carp at them, chiding them with bitter words. Hard-hearted they, for not knowing the fear of the gods. They will not repay their aged parents the cost of their nurture. For might shall be their right, and one man shall sack another's city. There will be no favour for the man who keeps his oath, or for the evildoer and the violent dealing. Strength will be right, and reverence will cease to be, and the wicked will hurt the worthy man, speaking false words against him, and will swear an oath upon them. Envy, foul mouth, delighting in evil, and scowling face will go along with wretched men, one and all." So there's no hope for the Iron Age. Hesiod said that. In the Bible, 1 Timothy chapter 3, it says, "For in the last days there shall be men lovers of violence and greedy and slanderous and etc., etc." Hermes did that. Now, of course, this is the original. This is the original. And in the Lament of Hermes, he says, "No one, I see times to come, no one will pursue philosophy with single-mindedness and purity of heart. Those with a grudging and ungenerous temperament will try to prevent men discovering the priceless gift of immortality. Philosophy will become confused, making it hard to comprehend. It will be corrupted by spurious speculation." This is long. This is a long prophecy. But Hermes foresaw because he knew the cycle. He knew that the golden age that Saturn bequeathed to Jupiter, and then Mars and then Venus and all these planets have taken over, and respectively we've been in Jupiter for 2,000 years. Jupiter's now giving back the reins to Saturn. Before that was Mars. There was a lot of wars going on in that time. And then Taurus, there was a lot of, bull worship and Mithra and slaying of bulls, and the Hindus with their, reverence for the bull, etc. The Egyptians for Hathor. It comes from the age. You see, you always honour the sign that the sun is in. For instance, during the year, you get to, this is what they call Lent, the days of Lent, 40 days. Well, they eat fish, don't they? Because of Pisces, right? And then you eat lamb, and then you eat beef. You'll see that you just look at the holidays of the religions and what they're observing, and you'll see that it all goes in with above. Everything above dictates what happens below. Everything. Egypt is an image of the heavens, and the whole cosmos dwells there. In this its sanctuary, but the gods will desert the earth and return to heaven, abandoning this land that was once the home of spirituality. Egypt will be forsaken and desolate, bereft of the presence of the gods. It will be overrun by foreigners who will neglect our sacred ways. This holy land of temples and shrines will be filled with corpses and funerals. The sacred Nile will be swollen with blood, and her waters will rise utterly fouled with gore. But I foresee that in times to come, clever intellectuals will mislead the minds of men, turning them away from pure philosophy. It will be taught that our sacred devotion was ineffectual, and the heartfelt piety and assiduous service with which we Egyptians honour Atum was a waste without reward. Egypt will be widowed. Every sacred voice will be silenced. Darkness will be preferred to light. No eyes will rise to heaven. The pure will be thought insane, and the impure will be honoured as wise. The madman will be believed brave, and the wicked, look at it, like George Bush, turns up, in Iraq with a military uniform and hops off the helicopter, and all these idiots who watch Fox, and all those buffoons, Glenn Beck and all those idiots on there spewing forth their vomitous lies, And they think, oh, George Bush is a hero, he's a hero. Well, Egypt's just telling us they're buffoons. You know, the buffoons are the ones that are called heroes. And the heroes, we put them in mental asylums like Ezra Pound. You know, the true heroes, the true aristocratic, spirit-loving, wise philosophers, they get thrown into mental asylums. That's what it's saying. Knowledge of the immortal soul will be laughed at and denied. No reverent words worthy of heaven will be heard or believed. Nothing will remain of your religion but an empty tale, which even your own children will not believe. Nothing will be left to tell of your wisdom but old graven stones, etc., etc. So you see, Hesiod said it, Homer said it, the Bible says it. It's the Dark Ages. It's simple as that. These are the Dark Ages. Iron, there's 2,000 years of iron and a lot of bronze here. We've had basically 5,000 years of the time of Amun, 5,000 years of the time of Amun, which means hidden, according to Stephen Miller. You see? And according to Stephen Miller, he says that Akhenaten, who was around about here, tried to bring back the age of Aten, which was here. This was the age of Aten over here, going back here. Aten, and this is Amun. 5,000 years of darkness, according to the Egyptians, the indigenous wisdom keepers. Now, the philosophers also spoke much about what we need to do in our thoughts, our speaking, our actions. For instance, Epictetus and Seneca, first century philosophers. Marcus Aurelius based a lot of his wisdom on Epictetus's writing. And by the way, these are the two philosophers that most people suspect in history that Christian principles were based on, these guys. Seneca was Nero's philosopher and Epictetus was a contemporary. And there are scholars out there who swear black and blue that these are the two guys. Because when you read, you read Epictetus or Seneca and you will find principles that leave this book for dead. Absolutely exquisite Roman and Grecian philosophy. It's exquisite because it comes from a higher school, comes from a higher consciousness. They remembered the ancients. And if you think they weren't that smart, well, you need to go for a walk down to Egypt and see all the beautiful optical machinery, the machinery with which they put grooves in those granite rocks and polish those rocks. And you can see clearly there's abundant evidence, especially in Carmen Butler's DVD, The Pyramid Code, that they used high-tech machines. Optical precision, laser precision machinery. Stuff that we don't even know about yet. We still have not discovered it. It is impossible to make a pyramid like they did. It's absolutely impossible. You can see it. Anyone with a half a brain can work that out. It's impossible. Who did it? Well, the higher consciousness. The higher ages did it. And these guys remembered it. I mean, anything you read, I don't know where to start, but this one of Seneca is on anger, mercy, and revenge. And how he explains, not in a hard and allegorical and confused manner that the Bible does, but in a clear manner, how we can overcome anger and how we can, improve our spirituality. I mean, I'd love to share something, but I think I'll press forward because what I want to discuss is the diet of the vegetarian philosopher. Okay, and this is important because remember the word animal. And it has to do with the eating of flesh, according to the philosopher, has to do with the shedding of blood, and that's soul, animal. Whereas plants, there's no bloodshed. Plato in the Republic urged that the upper classes should abstain from eating meat. Not only a vegetarian diet was the healthiest option, but growing plants also requires less land than producing animal food. Porphyry, in his book This is a Thomas Taylor version, right? Porphyry. His 4 books on abstinence from animal food. You know, they burned his books in the 3rd century, Porphyry, because he wrote against the Christians. And Celsus did 100 years before him. Those books must be read if you want to understand who Christianity really, really is. This false, rubbish, antichrist Christianity on the scene in your churches, in the community. It's absolutely the antichrist, because this is the true Christian religion, based on science. It's not based on any kind of hocus pocus that they're teaching in the churches. Porphyry said that the concept of justice should be extended to animals, as justice in this case means not to commit unnecessary murder. Most of meat eaters justify their choice by claiming that animals are irrational and therefore not subjected to the same moral rules. But Porphyry refutes this argument by saying that this is not a reasonable thinking, as there are humans who lack rationality and yet they are protected by moral rules against murdering solely for being humans. Thus, Porphyry says that it is not completely accurate to believe that animals are irrational, as they have memory, sensations, fellow feeling and prudence. The fact that they cannot communicate properly their reasoning does not mean that they shouldn't be treated with justice. If a person comes from another country and speaks a different language, this person shouldn't be punished because others cannot understand what he or she says. Marsilio Ficino, the guy who we just spoke about, the Renaissance master, said he argued that a vegetarian diet could help a person elevate consciousness and purify the body. He encouraged his followers to become vegetarians and abstain from anything that could enslave the senses, such as the kind of bodily pleasures that could dominate the mind. Plutarch in his tractate on the eating of flesh, he argued that people are not naturally carnivorous, but gluttony makes them cruel, as the desire to please the senses with the taste of flesh becomes more important than the life of other living creatures. Allowing animal slaughter unnecessarily only indicates that men are being dominated by their bodies. In accordance with the Platonic philosophy, Neoplatonists defend that the mind should govern men's principles. As the use of intellect, it is one of the things that differentiate humans from animals. And when the bodily instincts take over, men are usually corrupted. So the only reason why people do not want to give up eating animals is because eating flesh pleases the senses. A true philosopher must be above the senses and must not allow the instincts to overshadow the principles. Leonardo da Vinci, in letters exchanged with friends, usually mentioned piety for animals. He was a vegetarian, of course, and it is said that he bought birds at the market only to set them free. As a good Neoplatonist, Da Vinci assumed that killing animals just to satisfy one's desires for flesh was absurd. It attests to the incapability of having control over the senses. Plato called this kind of behaviour tyranny of the senses. With the intellect, when the intellect learns that something is morally wrong, but the physical body ignores this principle in the name of its satisfaction. Plutarch says, "We can claim no great right over land animals which are nourished with the same food, inspire the same air, wash in, drink the same water that we do ourselves, and when they are slaughtered, they make us ashamed of our work by their terrible cries. And then again, by living amongst us, they arrive at some degrees of familiarity and intimacy with us." He goes on to say, Plutarch, in his essay on flesh eating, "If they could now assume consciousness and speak, they might exclaim, 'O blessed and God-loved men who live at this day, what a happy age in this world's history has fallen to your lot, who plant and reap an inheritance of all good things which grow for you in ungrudging abundance. What rich harvest do you not gather in? What wealth from the plants, from the plains? What innocent pleasures is it not in your power to reap from the rich vegetation surrounding you on all sides? You may indulge in luxurious food without staining your hands with innocent blood. while as for us, wretches, our lot was cast in an age of the world the most savage and frightful conceivable. We were plunged into the midst of an all-prevailing and fatal want of the commonest necessities of life from the period of Earth's first genesis. While yet the gross atmosphere of the globe hid the cheerful heavens from view, while the stars were yet wrapped in a dense and gloomy mist of fiery vapours, and the sun, Earth itself, had no firm, regular course. Our globe was then a savage and uncultivated wilderness, perpetually overwhelmed with the floods of the disorderly rivers, abounding in shapeless and impenetrable morasses and forests. So what he's saying there is the animal feels, what a time to be alive at this, the worst time in which humans just come along and just rip your head off and eat you. That's from the point of view of the animal. Nothing puts us out of countenance, not the charming beauty of their form, not the plaintive sweetness of their voice or cry, not their mental intelligence, not the purity of their diet, not superiority of understanding. For the sake of a part of their flesh only, we deprive them of the glorious light of the sun, of the life for which they were born. The plaintive cries they utter we affect to take to be meaningless, whereas in fact they are entreaties and supplications and prayers addressed to us by each which way. Is it not the satisfaction of your real necessities we deprecate? It is not the satisfaction of your real necessities we deprecate, but the wanton indulgence of your appetites. Kill to eat, if you must or will, but do not slay me that you may feed luxuriously. So in other words, the animal's saying, I don't begrudge you, you need to eat. But must you slay because for your better eating? You've already got eating. There's already food out there. There's cherries and apples and bananas and carrots and pumpkins. Why does blood need to be spilled? This is the thinking we might have to address if it concerns us. Alas for our savage inhumanity. It is a terrible thing to see the table of a rich man decked out by those layers of corpses, the butchers and cooks. A still more terrible sight is the same table after the feast. For the wasted relics are even more than the consumption. Have you seen this? I'm privileged to be able... I'm a musician, a professional musician, so I get to do corporate functions, So, you go to a function of, say, a bank break-up party at the end of the year or something, right? And you see all these diners and all these intellectuals that go to celebrate the corporation, you see, and I get to play and watch their behaviour. And I see how much food, they've got the choice of grapes and watermelon and all sorts of carcasses. They bring out fish and they bring out meat and they bring out all sorts of food. And as Plutarch says, the wasted relics are even more than the consumption. And yet people are starving to death on this planet. These victims then have given us their lives uselessly, as other times from the mere niggardliness. The host will grudge to distribute his dishes, and yet he grudged not to deprive innocent beings of their existence. Well, I have taken away the excuse of those who allege that they have the authority and sanction of nature. That man is not by nature carnivorous is proved in the first place by the external frame of his body, seeing that to none of the animals designed for living on flesh has the human body any resemblance. He has no curved beak, no sharp talons, no claws, no pointed teeth, no intense power, or stomach, or heat of blood, which might help him to masticate and digest the gross and tough flesh substance. On the contrary, by the smoothness of his teeth, the small capacity of his mouth, the softness of his tongue, and the sluggishness of his digestive apparatus, nature sternly forbids him to feed on flesh. And that's what Sri Yukteswar says in The Holy Science. There's a chapter there on flesh. And it's absolutely not for human consumption. You know, and it really upsets me when people who take the philosophical stance and try to be teachers, you know, in the truth movement and etc., and who do the opposite, you know, and teach that it's beneficial. And I know that people are doing this, and it just really, really makes me so distraught. It's absolutely not beneficial at all for anything. There's nothing beneficial in eating flesh at all. Not a thing. Nothing. You know, it's toxic. As they say, it's, you know, it's a waste of soul, animal being soul. But anyway, this is the thing that is more one studies and deepens his level of appreciation of the spiritual and the metaphysical of all of this, the more one then sees the need to adapt. You see, there are many things that we can do. Now this establishment, Magpie House, is dealing with yoga, right? So George is teaching yoga, and this is a physical and spiritual thing to practice. It has both benefits. You see, physically the yoga is just a magic for the body, but it's also a spiritual thing. You see, and this is why a lot of churchgoers will say, "Oh, yoga, oh, that's from the devil," right? It's from the devil. Yoga, you know, stretching, and filling your mind with good information is from the devil. But you see, these are some of the things that we need to look at. Are we exercising and stretching with the good food that we eat, the good light food? Because raw food, and if you can add more raw food into your diet, you get more light, right? Because it hasn't been burned, cooked, grilled, roasted, fried, or anything like that. You see, which actually destroys the enzymes in the food. But you know, things like yoga is all about stretching. You know, it's just getting all the joints moving and stuff like that. Dancing is a good way to do yoga. You know, grab a partner and do half an hour a day or something like that. Because the more light food that you eat, and that's L-I-G-H-T, raw food, the more your body can use. The body can use those atoms because they haven't been destroyed. You know, they haven't lost an element like an electron, which is what causes free radicals. You see, and processed food is like that. That's why they cook it to death. It's fried, and cooked food is actually destroying the food, the goodness of the food. As you grow with this knowledge of the, and by the way, Prisca Theologia is not saying that only ancient knowledge is useful and no new stuff. I mean, you know, there's new information that is handy too. It's timeless wisdom. It's not Prisca as in ancient, it's timeless. And as you learn this timeless wisdom, then you grow and you see the need to shed things that you discern for yourself that are no good for you anymore. You see, you might need to eat some fish at the moment, and because we've had thousands of years of this meat-eating tradition, we've fallen. You see, the tyranny of the senses. And in some cultures, they eat humans. They've gone one step further and they've gone to cannibalism, right? They're not satisfied with just eating animals. But we fell to that condition. It was not like that in the past. In the past, we did not do this. And I've got proof of that. You know, you've got Ovid in the Metamorphoses 2,000 years ago saying that, please, he's saying to fellow humans, because he was Pythagorean, and they were all, man, every philosopher was a vegetarian, right? So, the great philosophers, that is, all of them. And he says there that, you know, even Empedocles, the Sicilian philosopher, he was around the time of Pythagoras.
100 odd years ago, vegetarians were called Pythagoreans.
Yeah, Pythagoreans, yeah. But as we go, you know, we can make these decisions for ourselves because you know what you need and you are a priest unto yourself. Simple as that. So no one's giving anybody any hard and fast rules, and no one's standing up trying to be the best example. I'm not, certainly not. You know, so don't. I try to tell people just that I'm not there to give real, deep, and specific advice of any way to live. I know yoga's good. I do it. You know, I practice my own yoga at home. I do my own stretches and look after. I feel which muscles need, you know, a stretch, elongation. Where I, you know, I might do a little bit of dancing to relax or something like that. Breathing is very, very important to learn how to breathe. Unfortunately, a lot of people are breathing incorrectly. Right? You see them do this. You know, they suck in here and they breathe in here when they're breathing in. That doesn't make sense. If you blow into a balloon, it expands, right? So when you're drawing in, everything should be just going straight down through the diaphragm, right down the bottom. You know, just it should be sort of going all the way down to the feet, if you can. You know, you envisage the breath going down to the feet almost, and expansion. And then when you blow out, then you can contract, you know. But I can see people's breathing from you know, a long way away. I can see whether they're breathing correctly or not. That needs to be corrected first, because once you can get... and there is a philosophical school that suggests that you've been given a certain number of breaths. Yeah, you've been dished out a certain number of breaths, and once they expire, you expire. That's what they say. So they teach, and I think it's in the East where they say, so breathe slowly, because you're going to live long. Yeah. And you'll find most of these geniuses and most of these great inventors. Francis Crick, for instance, discovered DNA on LSD. Okay? This is why the likes of Aldous Huxley and Timothy Leary, you know, advanced the idea that, you know, we need to try some good, mind-expanding, natural plants that have DMT in there. DMT is what the pineal gland produces, you see, dimethyltryptamine, and it causes you to have visions. This is the visionary eye. Yeah, well, the war on drugs is basically, you know, it's a confused war, because why would they be attacking plants that are just growing like psilocybin mushroom and plants that have DMT when they should be going after the, you know, George Bush, when he declares a war on drugs, he should be going after, you know, your barbiturates and your what other sort of drugs that are bad. You know, not lumping them in with entheogens, psychedelics, and hallucinogens. You know, and that's what they're doing. They're doing that because they are the ones who make the drugs. They are the drug traffickers. And they've been exposed many times, so I'm not just making this up. You know, George Bush has got a big drug-pushing cartel going. And that's why he has his war on drugs, so he can get funding from taxpayer money for it, so that they've got, you know, big police force, and they're all already taking care of the drug trafficking, and they can use that to disguise their war on drugs to get people who are taking cannabis, for instance, which is a mind-expanding drug. And this is what they do. They're all very, very clever. Now, just a little bit more. We've got Porphyry now. He says, it does not follow, if we have more intelligence than other animals, that on this account they are to be deprived of intelligence, as neither must it be said that partridges do not fly because hawks fly higher. Someone, therefore, may admit that the soul is copassive with the body, and that the former suffers something from the latter. It must be demonstrated, therefore, that there is a rational power in animals, and that they are not deprived of prudence. And in the first place, indeed, each of them knows whether it is imbecile or strong, and in consequence of this, it defends some parts of itself, but attacks with others. Thus, the panther uses its teeth, the lion its nails and teeth, the horse its hooves, the ox its horns, the cock its spurs, and the scorpion its sting. But the serpents of Egypt use their spittle, whence also they are called tuades, spitters. With this they blind the eyes of those that approach them, and thus a different animal uses a different part of itself to attack in order to save itself. They likewise change their places of abode at certain times, and know everything which contributes to their advantage. In a similar manner, in fishes and in birds, a reasoning energy of this kind may be perceived. So that's what the philosopher thinks, you see. And that's where that's where we're going. This is philosophy, because what is philosophy? Phil means love, and Sophia, she's a goddess of wisdom. Right brain. We love this. We love wisdom. Why wouldn't you want to be a philosopher? A lover of wisdom? Or you want to be a doofus? You know, the dunce on the block? You'd know. And this is the knowledge that grows that. Lucius Annius Seneca. That's the guy who we just spoke about. Seneca. He was a vegetarian. He said, "Many dishes have induced many diseases. Note how vast a quantity of lives one stomach absorbs. Insatiable, unfathomable gluttony searches every land and every sea. Some animals it persecutes with snares and traps, with hunting nets, with hooks, sparing no sort of toil to obtain them. There is no peace allowed to any species of being." You have a look at those little chickens that are cooped up, and they can only face this way. And they've got their beaks have been burned off, the pain. You have a look at your cows that have had branding on their faces. Have you seen the movie Earthlings, narrated by Joaquin Phoenix? Please check out Earthlings.
I couldn't show that one here, it's too graphic.
It's too graphic, but it shows how what scientists are doing to animals, you know, testing on chimpanzees and injecting them with all sorts of things. I think those animals are just waiting for the morning sun to come through the window so they can be injected with AIDS and, you know, all sorts of things that Bayer and Johnson & Johnson and all of these big pharma run by the Vatican. Yeah, we don't see it. We don't see what's going on in those laboratories, but you've got little chickens and little guinea pigs and innocent little animals. Plotinus, everyone's favourite. He was in the 2nd century, Neoplatonist, student of Harmonius Saccus, I believe. But anyway, this is what he says in his 9th tractate. The intellectual principle, the ideas and the authentic existence. All human beings from birth onward live to the realm of sense more than to the intellectual. Forced of necessity to attend first to the material, some of them elect to abide by that order, and their life throughout make its concerns their first and their last. The sweet and the bitter of sense are their good and evil. They feel they have done all if they live along pursuing the one and barring the doors of the other. And those of them that pretend to reasoning have adopted this as their philosophy. They are like the heavier birds which have incorporated much from the earth and are so weighed down that they cannot fly high for all the wings nature has given them. You know that pelican, right? When he grabs a big fish, right, and he tries to get away. He's got too much fish in his mouth, right? He's saying people have, you know, filled their heads with opinions, you know. Oh, and my opinion's right, yours is wrong, and, you know, and I think it should be like this, and it's all heavy with opinion, and they can't fly. Because it says all human beings from birth onward live in the realm of sense. You see, when you trust those 5 senses, you know, what does it feel like? It feels like an elephant. Right, right, but it could be a bear, and it's about to, you know, eat you. You know, you can't trust your senses. You can't trust your sight and your hearing. You know, and that's where this mind, the 6th sense, this is where. Well, I mean, we have to trust our senses, don't we? That's what we've got. That's what the brain. I mean, I'm seeing you by virtue of my eyesight. So my brain's telling me that you're there. So I need that so I know who I'm looking at, right? But But these are pure, what is seen through the eye is not how it really is. It's the reality of appearances, you see.
Just your perception, and everybody's perception can be different.
That's right. Others do indeed lift themselves a little above the earth. The better in their soul urges them from the pleasant to the nobler. But they are not of power to see the highest, and so, in despair of any surer ground, they fall back in virtue's name upon those actions and options of the lower form, of the lower from which they sought to escape. But there is a third order, those godlike men who in their mightier power, in the keenness of their sight, have clear vision of the splendour above and rise to it from among the cloud and fog of earth and hold firmly to that other world. Looking beyond all here, delighted in the place of reality, their native land, like a man returning after long wanderings to the pleasant ways of his own country. You see, what they're saying is eventually the godlike one, or the one that looks for God, you know, the cause of it all, he just doesn't satisfy, he's not satisfied with studying effects, he wants to know the causes, you see. Then he returns back to that land after he does mighty searches, he searches for the truth. And what is the other place and how is it accessible? It is to be reached by those who, born with the nature of the lover, are also authentically philosophic by inherent temper, in pain of love towards beauty, but not held by material loveliness. You see that pelican? That loveliness of that fish, but it can't fly, so it gets killed. Taking refuge from that in which... taking refuge from that in things whose beauty is of the soul, such things as virtue, knowledge, institutions, law and custom, and thence, rising still a step, each to the source of this loveliness of the soul, thence to whatever be above, that again, until the utmost is reached. It's just exquisite. Plotinus's... Here is the Nag Hammadi Gospels, okay? Now, they are hermetic. They talk about Jesus, but not as a historical person, because that's how Jesus should be spoken about. Jesus is not a historical person. In the Scriptures, he is defined as the Logos. Remember? The Logos. That's where speech... See, this is the Father, the thinker. And then the Logos speaks forth, and then the Holy Spirit gets sent in Gemini to go and work. You see? So it's the Logos, it's the wisdom. It's just divine wisdom of Hermes. Everything that Jesus has ever said in any Gospel can be taken directly from the mouth of Hermes. That can be proven. And it is. There's a Gospel called The Discourse on the 8th and the 9th. And that's what I'm encouraging you to read. The 8th and the 9th. That's talking about the 8 rings of the octave that we live in. So they were talking about that science in the Nag Hammadi documents. Okay? So I urge you to have a read of some of those if you're interested in knowing who Jesus really is. So we can put all this back into perspective, because Rome has told us that it's a historical person, and we will only have salvation by that historical person. I've proven with all my videos, not just this one, all my presentations, that is wrong. Jesus is, in fact, the spiritual essence of who we are. Oh, look, there would have been someone historically that would have taken that name, just like there would be a historical Jesus, if you like, because the mystery school that was around in the Middle East that was churning out Jesuses was operating until Titus came along and destroyed it. Remember Titus's arch? He commemorated the destruction of the Jerusalem, and they've got the Jewish menorah. Remember that? The Arch of Titus in Rome. Well, he commemorated that. the destruction, because what they did was they destroyed one of the Mediterranean's schools where you could go and be initiated. And in the initiation you had to go through ordeals, you see. So they were actually putting people on crosses. They were doing it. They used to do this in Egypt. You know, this is why Freemasons, you know, have got all their strange rituals. It's all based on this. This is Freemasonry. And they have to, you know, go through the ordeals just like the son goes through the ordeals, betrayal, and then, you know, blindfolded, and then killed, and then he's got to climb up and run away from his enemies, you know. Satan is always there, and then he's got to conquer. And then, you know, there's the sign of exaltation of the sun, and here is the sign where, etc., etc. Right? That's what we do in our ordeals. Now, in the Middle East, that's what they were doing. They were bringing people, you know, they had to carry their cross up the mountain, and then they had to be hung on the cross for 3 days. And when they survived the initiates, they were given a new name, and usually that name was Jesus. There's the Jesus. That's how it was known. It was not a historical person. It's the spiritual person in you. It's your soul. It's who you are. And then when one has achieved this illumination, one then is able to have the crown chakra pierced, and he is an illuminated chief, an Illuminati. There it is. There it is. And that is, you know, the vision that St. John had in Revelation. The moon, Mercury, Venus, the sun, Mars, Jupiter and Saturn. All described in the first chapter of Revelation, where it says, I beheld the Lord and his face shone like the sun. Well, that's the sun. And he had a sword that issued from his mouth. Well, that's Mars. Mars is the martial one. He's ready to fight at the drop of a hat. And he had white hair, you know, because he was the ancient one. Well, that's Saturn, old man Kronos. He's got white hair. It's all grey. He doesn't got any, you know, nice dyed hair. The belt around the paps. I mean, what's Jesus doing with, you know, with some nice little boobies? Well, and what's he doing with a belt around there, like a bra? So it's a bra, basically. Well, it's Venus. So he's describing in the first chapter of Revelation, and what happens is these are the 7 vowels of the creation, the 7 planets. These are the Elohim. That's the Elohim. He was actually describing the Elohim, the solar system, our big brother as above. Whatever it does, we do. We've got the sun in here. Marsilio Ficino has had a lot to say about the sun. I want to share something with you here. The sign in which the sun is exalted, that is Aries. In this way, becomes the head of the signs, signifying the head in every living thing. Also, the sign in which the sun is domiciled, that is Leo. It is the heart of the signs, and so rules the heart in any living thing. I'm stressing that because that's what I'm talking about this in all of my presentations, you see. And the reason being is because that's how the system works. Aries is always the head. And the words for Aries have always meant that. In Jewish, Rosh means the head. In Greek, Krios means the head. In Latin, Primus means the head. That's where the primavera starts, the first season, the spring. Prima, that's Primus, right? Right ascension begins here. There's a lot of reasons. For when the sun enters Leo, it extinguishes in many regions the epidemic of the python's poison. Moreover, the yearly fortune of the whole world will always depend on the sun, on the entry of the sun into Aries. And hence, from this, the nature of any spring may properly be judged, just as the quality of summer is judged from the ingress of the sun into Cancer, or that of autumn from its entrance into Libra, and from the coming into Capricorn the quality of winter is discovered. These things are gleaned from the figures of the heavens present at that time. Since time depends on motion, the sun distinguishes the 4 seasons of the year through the 4 cardinal signs. Similarly, when the sun returns by the exact degree and minute to its place in the nativity of any person, his share of fortune is unfolded through the whole year. It happens in this way because the movement of the sun is the first and chief of the planets is very simple, as Aristotle says. Neither falling away from the middle of the zodiac, as the others do, nor retrograding. You see, all the other planets retrograde. And what's retrograde? Well, you know, if you're watching the planets, you see Saturn, he's doing this, then all of a sudden you see him go like this. And then he goes back forward, and he goes direct. So he's transiting a sign, and then all of a sudden he goes back a few degrees. And you go, what the hell? And you're watching this, you know, wow. I was watching that last year with Saturn in Virgo, right? It goes all the way to Speaker, then it goes back the other way in Libra here, Virgo and Libra. Saturn's been here for the last couple of years, right? So it retrograded, it went back to Virgo, and then it goes back, now it's in Libra, right? Well, it's still physically in Virgo, but anyway, won't go into that because it needs a lot of explaining. But in our vortex solar system, you see the planets are all doing this, and of course, that's why every orbit is elliptical, because they're all occurring in cones. Every orbit. There's not an orbit out there that is not elliptical, and because it's doing this, you see, it's conical. So what happens is when, let's say this will be Earth, here's the Sun, there's Mercury, Venus and the Earth. Say we're about here and Saturn is coming around and say Mars is coming around here, right? Because we are travelling fast along this way, we are heading in that direction, and Mars is going around this curve, he will seem to be going backwards. You see? They don't retrograde physically. They don't sort of stop, you know, and then go back and then, well, that was good, interesting little retrograde, that was, very kinky. They don't do that. But that's how it works, because we're all following the sun in its cone, and the sun is the leader. And all the planets follow. It's Snow White and the 7 dwarves. It's Little Red Riding Hood. It's Hercules. Samson pulls down the gates of Gaza. It's Troy. It's Helen of Troy. Helen of Troy is the moon. And where's my? There it is. Now this guy, Thomas Taylor, he was interpreting all the philosophers, right? And he's the best one. But he's talking about. Troy. Of course, you see, there are scholars who really believe and insist that Troy was physically on the historical plane. It's good when you have intelligent people, you know, shedding the light on all of these. You know, like you have, how many books have been written, you know, trying to prove that Jesus was historical and etc. and the apostles and everything like that. You know, but then you get one great book that comes along, like Alvin Boyd Coons, that one, and dismantles it with proofs. Absolute proofs. Well, what he's saying here about the Trojan War, etc., if I can find it. And I've got so many good points here. It's just beautiful the way this guy explains the myths, you know. Oh, there it is. Of course, it's in The Wandering of Ulysses, okay? This is one of the books that he translated. And he says, the Trojans are called genuine. For all the lives which subsist about bodies and irrational souls are favourable and attentive to their proper matter. On the contrary, the Greeks are rational souls, coming from Greece, i.e. from the intelligible into matter. You see, so it's talking about this. The Trojan War is talking about man, and the Greeks, of course, are going to call themselves the rational ones, coming in and experiencing the experience of matter. Hence, the Greeks are called foreign, but vanquish the Trojans as being of a superior order. But they fight with each other about the image of Helen, as the poet says, about the image of Aeneas. Helen signifying intelligible beauty, being a certain vessel attracting to itself intellect. An efflux, therefore, of this intelligible beauty is imparted to matter through Venus, and about this efflux of beauty the Greeks fight with the Trojans, rational with irrational lives. And those indeed that oppose and vanquish matter return to the intelligible world, which is their true country. You see, so when Ulysses spends 10 years returning to his true country, that's 10,000 years of incarnation it's talking about. That's talking about us. 10 is just, it's not 10 years literally, it's a symbolic number. According to the... as therefore the prophet in the 10th book of the Republic, and those indeed that oppose and vanquish matter return to the intelligible world which is their true country, but those who do not, as in the case with the multitude, are bound to matter. As therefore the prophet in the 10th book of the Republic, previously to the descent of souls, announces to them how they may return to their pristine felicity according to periods of 1,000 and 10,000 years. Thus also Calchas predicts to the Greeks their return in 10 years, the number 10 being the symbol of a perfect period. And as in the lives of souls, some are elevated through philosophy, others through the amatory art, and others through the royal and warlike disciplines. So with respect to the Greeks, some act with rectitude through prudence, but others through war or love, and their return is different according to their different pursuits. And that's how they all return back to Greece. Now, the best of the Jewish wisdom that you can get will come from the Sefer Yetzirah and the Zohar. Okay, these books perfectly explain all of this science. Okay, and in the Zohar, it's interesting to note in one of the books in the chapters in the Zohar, it talks about how to look at the Torah. And in here it explains that we must not look at the Bible, the Torah, as a literal document. Because the Jews gave us these silly stories. On a literal plane, they're silly, but they're wise stories. You know, they're hiding a great kernel of truth. You know, like a silly story like Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall, Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. Well, the origin of this is very simple, to people who are thinking. They don't need to, do too much thinking. That would be a happy egg, wouldn't it? Full moon, and in the ovaries that would be the egg. Right? So the moon, she climbs up. New moon, she climbs. There's quarter moon, quarter sun. And she keeps waxing. And finally she gets into her kingdom. She's full and glowing. That's Mary Magdalene. That's Helen of Troy. This is Troy. This is Troy. Right? And when Humpty Dumpty falls off the wall, there's no king that can put it back together again. Because that corresponds to the menstruation cycle. That egg's a goner. Right? So you see, all of the characters are there. There's not one that is not there. And this is what they're saying in the Zohar. Woe to the human being who says that the Torah presents mere stories and ordinary words. If so, we could compose a Torah right now with ordinary words and better than all of them. In other words, he's saying there's more to it than just ordinary little stories that you can mock. You know, when you hear about Samson killing his 1,000 with an ox, and Jonah, being swallowed by a whale for 3 days, etc. You know, please don't laugh at us. Even Origen in the 2nd century, the Alexandrian Gnostic Christian, said, they're just stories. They are stories that hide a deeper truth. Josephus said it. Philo Judaeus, Philo, the great first century scholar. He said that everything in the Bible, in fact he wrote works called allegory, explaining the allegories in the Bible. The Apostle Paul in Galatians chapter 4 talks about the allegory of Sarah and Haggai. Because Sarah would be the moon, and the moon is the mother of spiritual Israel. Right? She would be Isis. But the earth, Hagar, she is the mother of the slaves, because the earthbound people are slaves, whereas spiritual ones that go to Sarah, you see. And where do you find Sarah? Well, she's on top of the mountain. That's the spiritual, our spiritual mother, you see. And when Moses climbs Mount Sinai, that's the mountain of sin, the mountain of the moon. Another word for moon is sin, and Sinai comes from that word. You see, it says, fools of the world look only at the garment, the story of the Torah. They know nothing more. Thomas Paine, who was a Hermetist, I'm going to wind up in 5 minutes. Thomas Paine, who was a Hermetist, and one of the founders of the Republic, of the Hermetic Republic of the United States of America. And he said, as to the Christian system of faith, it appears to me as a species of atheism, a sort of religious denial of God. It professes to believe in a man rather than in God. It is a compound made up chiefly of manism, but with but little deism. And it is near to atheism as twilight is to darkness. It introduces between man and his maker an opaque body, which it calls a redeemer. As the moon introduces her opaque self between the earth and the sun, and it produces by this means a religious or an irreligious eclipse of light. It has put the whole orbit of reason to shade. The effect of this obscurity has been that of turning everything upside down and representing it in reverse. And among the revolutions it has thus magically produced, it has made a revolution in theology. As to the theology that is now studied in its place, it is the study of human opinions and of human fancies concerning God. That's all it is. You go to church, you go to Jehovah's Witnesses, human opinions, buffoons. Go to the Mormons, same crap. Seventh-day Adventists, all of them. They've all got their patented version of the same rubbish lie from Rome. It is not the study of God himself in the works that he has made, but in the works or writings that man has made. That's what the churches are up to. Yeah. And it is not among the least of the mischiefs that the Christian system has done to the world that it has abandoned the original and beautiful system of theology, the Prisca Theologia. He knew it. And to make room for a hag of superstition. And you need to read what he says. He calls Christianity a dag on the spiritual evolution of the human race. A dag, like a sheep has a dag on its bum. That's what Christianity is. It's like a dag dragging us back into the world of superstition, killing scientists like Galileo Galilei and murdering prophets of this true wisdom. The age of ignorance commenced with the Christian system. But the Christian system laid all waste. And if we take our stand about the beginning of the 16th century, we look back through that long chasm to the time of the ancients, as over a vast sandy desert, in which not a shrub appears to intercept the vision to the fertile hills beyond. It is an inconsistency scarcely possible to be credited that anything should exist under the name of a religion that held it to be religious, to study and contemplate the structure of the universe that God made. So he's saying that Christianity has been opposed to the study of the universe, how God made it. It's been opposed. That's the enemy, Thomas Paine. That's what caused Teddy Roosevelt to call him a filthy little atheist 100 years later. Because, of course Teddy was, a corporate buffoon who wouldn't know what an atheist is. You know, he wouldn't know what Thomas Paine was anyway. He's just happy to vomit out his rubbish, like all the rest who came subsequent to the period of 1871 when they founded the Corporation of the United States, which is not the Hermetic Republic, Constitutional Republic of the United States of America. You see, everywhere where Hermes goes, he brings liberation. He did so to the Waldenses and the Lollards and the Huguenots and the Socinians and the Collegiants and the Anabaptists, etc. How many organisations, the Bogomils, the Cathars, the Albigenses, the Jews in Spain that were persecuted through the Inquisition. That was 1,000 years ago. And then the Renaissance came and they squashed that with the Reformation and the Counter-Reformation. And then the Republic came and set itself up. And this is all Hermetic. But then the Vatican saw what was happening over in the new lands, and it sent its banksters over to trick people. Andrew Jackson, the 7th President of the United States, says, "I killed the banks." Thomas Jefferson said, democracy is mob rule. We heard what Thomas Paine says. Thomas Paine also says that the Christian religion is a parody on the sun. I've got all those quotes. I've done them in other presentations. So these Hermetists tried to save the New World, but the Vatican came a-calling. After the death of Abraham Lincoln, they set up in Washington, D.C. a corporation called the United States, headed by the Vatican. That's why you have the two fasci in the Congress in America. The fasci belong to Rome. Rome tells you where it's ruling and who it's ruling and sodomizing. It makes fools and slaves out of the world. So this information is the information that frees, and I hope that you've enjoyed the presentation and urge you all to continue studying this stuff. You know, grab a book, a notepad, and do this. Do the zodiac, this wheel. This is the wheel that we were blessed with. That's why this is the most known symbol in the universe. This is our science, and no one shall take it away from us. It's coming back, and it will absolutely free mankind in the very, very near future. And it will destroy the fictions of false religion. Absolutely obliterate them. It was prophesied. Hesiod prophesied it. Hermes prophesied it. They all said it. All the prophecies know that when this age comes and Saturn returns in Aquarius, big time truth. He's a truth dealer. Oh yeah, that's why he's got the scythe. He gives you life in truth and he takes it away. Everything is just with Saturn. So enjoy the Prisca Theologia, and please continue to be prosperous in this information and spread it abroad, and we can help our brothers. And with that, I'd like to close and encourage anyone out there who's able to understand what I'm trying to achieve with all of this, and in particular with the 48 constellations, that I want to actually get anyone who knows how to do graphics and has equipment and time and is able to help. I would really like to reach out to anyone out there that can help me to put together a video that will have all of the stories, all of the legends, all of the Bibles and Gospels and mythologies, all of them interpretable by one short journey through the zodiac and the sun going through the zodiac from Aries, and we'll be able to see all the Bible characters and all the mythological characters in there. This is what I'd like to achieve.